Cody Tiffany 5686 says, "This series remains to be the best Pokemon fanfic. Vicky is the best. She reminds me of the MC in Ascendance of a Bookworm, but Pokemon instead of reading." Ramen says, "God damn, this AI needs to breathe." Wilderin over on Roy Road says, "Thanks for the chapter. Nice. 100 chapters in. Now the real journey begins." Daniel Martinez says, "Are there any more of this? And if so, where?" Well, let's get right into it.
Chapter 101. Pft, pft. I spit the sand out as I slowly rolled over so I wasn't just face down in the dirt. Ugh, it's in my mouth. I whined. Vicky. Papa was there, and hoisting me up, and all that really did was get sand spit into his face as I tried and failed to get more out. Vicky. Zoe. I muttered, tongue stuck out, and I knew it was covered in sand. I got a drink. Are you all right? Mama asked as she hurried over with a drink and kneeling beside me. Ugh. I took a swallow of her sweet fruit punch and swished it around before spitting it out. Gross. Yeah, I'm okay. Phew. What a head rush, that took a lot out of me. What even was that? You were glowing, Papa demanded, and just about then we all heard a yell from down the beach. Who? Is that a first-timer? Nice. Good job on your first Z move. The older teenaged boy shouted out. Huh. I raised my hand, which felt like lead, and gave him a thumbs up, which he returned. Z move? Papa whispered, no doubt remembering me talking about it. Yep. That was a Z move. The power of a trainer and Pokemon synced together, I said, and held up my Z ring. And now I have a Z ring in crystal. Jang. Jangmo whined from the sand, and I leaned up as Papa looked back to check on him. He was flat on his belly too. I pushed against Papa a bit to rise up, and he eventually helped me to my feet as I stumbled over and then collapsed next to Jangmo. That was awesome, I told him, and he mumbled a bit, but I could see his eyes, and he definitely wanted to do it again. I reached out and stroked his back. We just need to rest a bit. Jang. He seemed to agree, squirming a bit in the sand. He was okay, but he didn't try to get up. Then I realized that my team had all seen it too, but they hadn't made any noise. Turning around, seeing Mama and Papa both standing close to each other looking worried, I saw my team. Oh yeah, all of my dragons were staring at the place where the devastating Drake had struck. And all of them looked like they wanted it. Well, except Gibble. I'm pretty sure she just wanted to go back in the ocean. Gib, she was sort of struggling free of Dratini, but he was too focused to notice. I'm fine, I called out, feeling better already. I looked as Mama and Papa both jumped. It's okay. Really? I knew I'd get tired, but I didn't expect it to hit that hard. I'm fine. We're just, Papa trailed off. Normally he'd say something like we're just worried or whatever, but he was obviously more confused. Welcome to Alola. They have Z moves here. They're awesome, I decided to say, smiling brightly, and raised my Z ring up. And now I have them too. Then I flopped back down in the sand. Well, if you aren't going to die, I guess I should say that was really cool, Papa offered, and I felt my smile grow. It was, wasn't it? Devastating Drake. Yeah, that's a cool move. I would have to try out the Normalium Z too. It could really come in handy. Well, that and train all of my Pokemon in using Devastating Drake. Ugh. No wonder most Alolan trainers just stuck with like one Z move. It was a pain in the butt to get it all right. In the end, I just lay in the sand for a while as eventually everyone got used to what had just happened. It was a lot to deal with. Papa seemed to slowly calm down, but Mama was more worried, glancing at me, and each time I threw her a happy smile. Because I was happy. It took almost an hour before I started feeling normal. Definitely didn't want to do a lot of Z moves in rapid succession. Would I even be able to? I'd have to test it at some point, but maybe without the parents standing right there. Oh. I rose up with a groan and patted the sand off me, taking a moment to gather up my team. I'm gonna be late to see Professor Kukui. You should just take it easy. You fainted not long ago. Mama argued instantly and I shook my head. I really want to ask him questions about Z moves while we do the TM stuff. It's fine, Mama. I'm fine. See? I spun around, showing that I was back to being energetic. I still felt a tiredness, but it wasn't physical exactly, and I felt well enough. Let her go, Haruka. She's being stubborn, Vicky, no more of that, no more Z moves today. Papa demanded, and I nodded, easily agreeing. With that sorted, I dashed off as fast as my flip-flops would allow. Sorry I'm late, I called out as I entered the school, which was much emptier than last time. In here, Kukui called out, and inside the room both Kukui and Principal Oak were already going over papers, and I saw 4 new executors just outside the window. All 4 of them, from the sound of it, were eating food laid out for them on the floor above. Sorry, I called out again as I rushed over, and Kukui turned and gave me a look before winking. It's Alola, he corrected, and it took me a second to realize what he meant. Alola, Professor Kukui. Alola, Vicky. Don't worry. We were just going over the results from yesterday. Uh-huh. I'm excited to try more. Haha. It's a real Electabuzz in here. Oak offered, laughing and even trying to look like an Electabuzz as he said it. I couldn't help but giggle at his antics, and be glad he seemed to be sticking around. Well, with everyone here, let's use some TMs and see what happens. Kukui called out, and soon the executor were returned to their balls, each of them receiving a TM, then one at a time. Kukui released them and had them show off the move. Like I'd hoped, they each showed off Dragon Pulse that the TM had been made for. Area, Orb, Pierce, and Control. So it does work, I muttered, looking at Executor just happily back to eating as we all went over the results. That means TM companies could potentially sell different move variances as different TMs. That's quite a market. I couldn't help but think. If I could pick what sort of Dragon Pulse I wanted. Or Thunder? What if Thunder had some variances? It's amazing. Kukui agreed. The man was an absolute font of energy as he ran around the room. There was more recording equipment this time, and he'd taken video of the TM causing the moves to be different for each executor. I mean, this was part of his direct specialty. I had no doubt he was loving it. Oak nodded at my words slowly. Yes, but this research will cause TM corporations some real problems as well. Let's make more TMs and try to override all of them then. That way we can verify it wasn't just that one executor not wanting to change or something? I asked, knowing what Oak was referring to. Yes. Let's do that next. Oak agreed, smiling at me, and I smiled back up at him. Then we got back to work. I made more TMs with Oak, while Kukui went out with the executors and ran them through some more move tests, to verify they couldn't seem to adjust the move into the different forms. Each test result was the same. TM seemed to lock in the move as the TM had recorded it, and couldn't be replaced with another. I'm going to call in Lizaman, Oak finally said as we looked at the second round of tests. We'd basically gone around and gave the executors another TM with no change, and then tried it again with another set. Each time the same thing happened. The executors used that first TM they'd had installed and nothing else. You think it's a mechanical issue? It could be. She'd know, or at least be able to get us in touch with a TM technician to help us verify this. Alright. She's trustworthy, so feel free to bring her in. Excellent, that'll make the conversation easier. Oak offered with a laugh as he left the room, probably to his office. I sighed and sat up on the counter around the table and just rested my feet. Still feeling a bit tired. I guess it's a good time for a break, Kukui commented, noticing my tiredness. I'm okay. I used my first Z move today, I explained, and Kukui went from looking at papers to in my face in just a second. Really? What? He looked me over and seemed to notice the Z ring. You got a Z ring? Yeah. Kahuna Hala came to me today and decided that since I'd already done a trial before coming to Alola, I'd be allowed to take part in an island challenge. I completed a trial this morning, and Hala gave me a Z ring. That's supersonic. Congratulations. Thanks. I don't suppose you'd answer a few questions about them? Like how often should you use a Z move? And I sort of passed out, is that normal? Huh. Oh man, well I'll tell you there will be a bit of an encore, next time you use one. He winked at me. But you eventually harden up, and it doesn't hit as hard. Kukui, you're a menace. I managed to get out from between my giggles. Okay, that's good. I finally managed to say, when I stopped laughing. Well, the question about how often you can use them. That's a bit more complicated. Everyone is a bit different. Hala can actually do 2 of them in about half an hour, but that's it for the day. He's done. I usually need about an hour before I'm good for another, and if I space it out to a few hours I can do a few more. I nodded as he gave me some additional context. So I could end up not being able to do more than one a day. That's right. Some people are like that. Don't take it as a negative, it's just how it works. Thanks, Professor. Anytime. Now, I have a question. What Z move? I see a normalium, and is that dragonium? Yep. I had the chemonium first. But then I finished the trial, and helped out Grandpa Forrest, the big drampa. He gave me the dragonium, and Hala was going to give me the normalium, so he just decided to give it to me anyways. Huh. That's just like him. He's got a soft spot for this sort of stuff. Yeah, he's nice. So I went to the beach and did devastating Drake. Geez, right to the deep end, huh? Then again, with how many dragons you have, maybe you're more suited for dragon energy. MMM. It was really fun. Jangmo and I synced up pretty easily, and it just was a massive rush. Kukui was smiling at me as I chattered, and he took a moment to grab a chair and bring it over. Alright, since I know Hala didn't do it, let me give you some tips as well. There are some things you can do to make sure your Z move is just a bit better. He explained and I instantly sat up. Teach me, sensei. Huh. You aren't one of my students. Yet. He winked at me again and I was flattered that he would say that. Alright, first, you felt the energy when the move solidified, but there are some. The man that walked in after Principal Oak wasn't who I wanted to see, Luzaman. Instead it was one of her weird scientist guys, and their goofy suits. Seriously, Luzaman had an awesome outfit, but she made her underlings wear weird stuff. Professor. Ms. Vicky. This is Harold of the Ether Foundation. A TM technician. Alola. The man offered with a tight nod and not much of a smile. I've heard about the experiment. Can I see the results? And the differences? We have it over here. Kukui offered easily, and soon the man was slotted in looking through what we'd compiled, and even seeing the executor use Dragon Pulse themselves, a few times, and confirming the TM didn't seem to change anything. I can confirm the TM is settling. But it doesn't. He opened up a briefcase he'd come in with and it was actually a laptop? Neat. He went to work pulling up a program, that was. A TM adjustment program? Interesting. I could only just register what the program even was, thanks to how familiar I was with computers from my last life. Not that Pokemon computers followed the same format. There was no Windows or Apple here. I'm going to run an adjustment to the TM process. Can you? Perfect. I brought the TM maker over already suspecting. We hooked it in, and once more Dratini was released to make another Dragon Pulse TM. This time when it was done we installed it, and watched as the executor that had used Dragon Pulse Pierce shifted a bit and then shot out Dragon Pulse Pierce. That's, Harold looked. What is it? Kukui asked, and Harold looked hesitant before shaking his head. I'm sorry. I'll need to speak to Luzaman before I can confirm. So it's bad. Kukui offered without hesitation, and Harold just shook his head. I can't comment. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I have to go. I'd suggest not trying to overwrite the TM like this any further. And with that particularly uncomfortable warning the guy packed up his laptop and practically rushed out of the door. I'll reach out to Luzaman again. Really? Principal Oak uttered, definitely unhappy, and Kukui nodded. I have some contacts. I'll make some inquiries as well. The Ether Foundation is usually good about being open about things. Something is definitely wrong. Well. Crap. I decided was the emotion I wanted to convey, and both men stilled, realizing I was here. I'm sure it's nothing serious. Kukui tried to downplay it, and I just rolled my eyes. It's serious. Serious enough that guy just ran back his boss's boss before giving the information out of the company. I think he just found out something that could damage the Ether Foundation, and if it can do that, how many other companies out there making TMs can also be damaged with this? I think this got more serious. Yeah. Kukui finally admitted with a sigh. Can I get a copy of everything? I want to send it to Professor Seras in Kanto. If that's okay? Sure. Kukui agreed, thankfully not bothered. Maybe he'll be able to shed light on it as well. You work with Seras? Oak asked, as he looked me over, and I nodded. Yep. When I was in the conference this year, he reached out to me and asked if I'd be willing to work with him. I'm currently a research fellow at his lab. Well, mostly I'm just sort of doing my own thing and helping out when he needs muscle on research trips. Muscle? Kukui asked curiously, and I had to hold back my snickers. I don't think he's a very strong battler. So I help keep the Pokemon from ruining his equipment and stuff. Huh. Says the professor that moonlights as a professional wrestler and battler. I headed off then, heading to the hotel. So much had happened today, and yeah, that was a lot. Z moves, TM research coming up sketchy, and now I had to make a long-distance call. I walked into the hotel and straight to the hotel receptionist. Alola. I need to make a call to Kanto? Alola. We have business phones over in that corner. Are you sure your parents are okay with you making a long-distance call? She asked, surprisingly not sounding judging, but just that she was making sure I was allowed. Oh yeah. I need to call the Pokemon professor I work with. Thanks. I rushed towards the door she'd pointed out, and it was basically a room with kiosks. What a weird setup. I took the first one that was free and gathered my papers as I made a call. While it went through, I glanced at the research papers. Kukui, for all his laid-back attitude, had a serious focus on accuracy while researching. He was very thorough. Hopefully Seras could help. Viridian Research Lab? Oh. Vicky. It was Ren that picked up. He was half leaning back in his chair and only sat up when he saw it was me. Aren't you on vacation? Yep. Still in Alola, it's wonderful, and I'll tell you all about it later. I had something weird happen. In brief. Did some research on TMs and moves here, and something weird is happening. I have a research paper I'm going to fax over. Can you accept it? Oh sure. 1 SEC. Okay. I pushed the papers into the fax machine section of the video call and it started processing. While we wait, want to fill me in a bit? Yeah, we discovered something weird with TMs. Basically, I can teach Dragon Pulse in a few different variants, and we wanted to see if we could make TMs of the variations. We can, but Pokemon can only learn one, and then when we try multiple it just doesn't work. They're stuck with the first one. We had a TM tech come in to check into it, and he left freaked out, and said to stop trying it. As my explanation went on, Ren looked more concerned as he sat up fully in his desk, and was already grabbing the papers that were faxed over. You're right, that does sound serious. This tech, where does he work? He works with the Ether Foundation. They're apparently the only company making TMs for Alola right now. We actually got the equipment to make the TMs from them. Luzaman, their president, is apparently pretty reliable, but this had Professor Kukui and Principal Oak shook up. Yeah, no kidding. TMs are. Well, they're considered part of the military defense. If there's something wrong with them, that's not good. Huh. This looks weird. He muttered, looking over the papers. I'll call Seras right away. Alright, I won't hold you, this call is long distance. Talk to you later, Ren. Alola. Enjoy your vacation. Don't get too caught up in this. Bye. Well. Hopefully this wasn't serious. I went up to the hotel room, released my team and just flopped on the bed. What a day. I could still feel the Z ring on my wrist. It felt a bit out of place, but I'd get used to it. It's not like I was going to leave it behind. Being able to use a super power move at any time in an emergency was way too useful. Teeny? Dratini was there curling up on my back. His cool scales felt pretty good as he settled on top of me, and then when I opened my eyes his head was next to mine. I'm just feeling tired. Teeny. Dra. Dratini. I smiled at his words. He was definitely trying to cheer me up. I'm okay, buddy. Today's just been a lot. Teeny. Dratini. He nodded, agreeing as he then flopped down and cuddled up to me. I felt Jangmo brush my fingers hanging off the edge of the bed, and I scritched him a bit. I was just starting to relax. Riolu turning on the TV would keep her occupied, and everyone was spreading out when I felt the bed sort of shift to the side. No, it was the sheets. I lifted up and looked. Gibjibble said from the floor where she was holding the sheets, having just tried to lift herself up. There was no way Gibble was going to be able to climb up onto the bed like this though. I reached down and when she saw my hand she gibbed and grabbed it. I held her tight and pulled, and she came off her feet and onto the bed. It took a second but then she looked around. Gib, she rose up on tottery legs and stumbled around the bed exploring. I flopped back down. I was fairly confident she wasn't going to go feral and bite me anymore, and I was too tired to stress about it. Tomorrow I still had Hala's grand trial, which would be important. If I could win that, should I ask if I can have some of my other team sent over? I considered it before just discarding the idea. I still wasn't sure if I was allowed to have them over. I'd have to ask, and this was. It felt right to go into a challenge with the Pokemon I had with me. This Alolan adventure was something we all shared, so this trial would be part of it. Yeah. I yawned and finally felt myself drift off. Mama and Papa came in to check on me at some point, but all I remember was telling them I wasn't hungry, and that was that. The sun coming in from the cheery Alolan sun was what finally got me, as I yawned and stretched, feeling quite warm despite not having a blanket. Dratini purred out a yawn in my ear as I felt his weight on my back shift around a bit before sliding off. As I sat up I checked on everyone. Brave was in her water bowl, although it probably needed a refill. Riolu like usual was already up watching TV, Jangmo was somewhere, and Mimikyu was cuddled up at my side. I looked back. Gib. Okay then. Gibble was on her back just laying against my leg. I shifted her so I could get up and then stared out into the beach I could see through the window. The lapping waves and bright sun. I could completely understand why people fall in love with Alola. The whole place is beautiful and perfect. Let's wake up, get some food, and maybe a quick swim. I called out as everyone looked at me. Then we've got another battle. Jang. I heard scrabbling claws on the carpet and Jangmo popped out from under the bed and ran around in a circle for a moment before stopping and looking up at me. Jang. Yeah. We'll knock their socks off with our Z move. Chapter 102. Alola. I cheered out as I walked up the dirt path. Jangmo at my side practically buzzing as his claws tippy-tapped into the dirt. He wasn't so much walking as vibrating so hard he kept moving forward. Alola. Hala called back, and I noticed he wasn't alone. I nodded to Olivia who was seemingly here to watch and a few others that I didn't recognize. Victoria, we have some who wish to watch the trial, I hope that you don't mind. Not at all. Battles are meant to be fun. I offered back as I walked in and smiled at Olivia who smirked at my words, nodding. I reached down and picked up Jangmo so he'd stop vibrating so much. I didn't want him to wear himself out. Indeed. A learning experience, but an enjoyable expression of our bonds more than that. I heard you used Devastating Drake yesterday. Hee hee. It knocked me on my butt. It's a lot more draining than I expected. Indeed. I look forward to how you mix your Z moves into your grand trial. Let us take our positions. I nodded, as Hala walked away and Olivia looked at me. Stand over there across from Hala, the battle style should be familiar enough for you, 2 on 2. We all look forward to seeing what you can do. Good luck. Thank you. I hurried over and then settled Jangmo beside me, but I gave him a look and he huffed and nodded, settling down on his belly. He wouldn't be the first Pokemon today. He was my trump card. Olivia was apparently the referee as Hala and I stood across from each other. Attention competitors. The grand trial, between Kahuna Hala and the challenger Victoria Ferrous is now prepared to get underway. It's truly an honor to battle you. Hala offered, and I blinked and nodded. It's truly an honor to battle you. I responded back, mimicking his tone. Definitely some manner of tradition. Go. Hala called out, releasing a Crabrawler. I nodded, my hand reaching for Dratini, but fighting type, huh? You want this? I asked, bringing up a Pokeball to my mouth. It was silent for a moment before it rumbled. Then you're up. Riolu. Ryu. She cheered as she appeared and took a stance looking quite fearsome, before she looked behind her at me, and stuck her tongue out. I stuck mine right back, and then Hala chuckled. I see. Good, I always enjoy seeing how young trainers handle fighting-type Pokemon. My eye was on Crabrawler as it hid itself behind its claw-like gloves. Ducking and adjusting. Riolu had some martial training from Lucario, but she was still undisciplined. If this came into a head-to-head, she might get her clock rung a bit. Hopefully we were in sync today. Bubble Beam. Hala called out to start, and Riolu jumped back a bit before I could say anything. Vacuum Wave. Then follow the path through. I called out, and Riolu hesitated, but thankfully Bubble Beam wasn't the fastest move and she had gained some space. After a moment's hesitation she nodded and her fists came together. Ryu. She shouted, blasting a hole through the bubbles, popping them and forcing Crabrawler to juke to the side, which it did with a motion similar to a boxer. That was pretty smooth. I might have to work with Riolu with that. Riolu did as I ordered and was charging in, missing all the leftover bubbles as she charged. Crabrawler. Grab Riolu. Jump. Don't let it get closer. I called out and Riolu leaped upwards, just avoiding Crabrawler's swiping claw, trying to pin her down. Now Vacuum Wave again. Straight down. Ryu. She yelled back, having leapt up a bit panicked and lost control of herself as she landed well past Crabrawler without shooting any move. Bubble Beam. Do it, Riolu. Blast through. Riolu did not in fact do it. She yelped as she started dodging and rolling around to avoid the bubbles impacting all around her. Riolu. I yelled out so she could hear me. Vacuum Wave. I roared, punching with a fist, trying to convey what she had to do. And for a moment our eyes met, despite the bubbles all around her. Riolu. She responded, a Vacuum Wave lashed out and blasted the bubbles, forcing Crabrawler to dodge once again and clearing Riolu to have a moment to catch her breath. Your training together is lacking. But perhaps a challenge is just what you need to grow. Hala called out, sounding cheerful despite definitely kicking our ass so far. Power Up Punch. Hala called out and Crabrawler went from keeping his distance to charging in, with a very crab-like back and forth motion as Riolu's head spun from side to side to take in the motion. Vacuum Wave and move. Keep the distance up. I called out. For once Riolu was listening and started running to the side. Riolu wasn't the fastest, and we'd never gone through gravity training yet, but Riolu were naturally known for their endurance. We could definitely keep up a pace and blast Crabrawler into the dirt. I see. A fine strategy. Let's see if you can handle it when I change it around. Crabrawler. Rain Dance. I frowned. Riolu was blasting out vacuum waves, but only clipping Crabrawler at best, but why rain? Crabrawler didn't have electric-type attacks. Right? A thunder would be rough, but powering up water moves maybe? Hydro Pump? Water Gun? Now Frost Breath. And Hala's plan came together. Riolu, who'd been running around in circles of the ring, was suddenly skidding on the smooth ice. Yelping as she windmilled her arms around and ended up nearly sliding right off the arena. Power-up punch. Hala called, and before Riolu could react, Crabrawler was right there, fist forward. I winced as Riolu didn't have a chance to dodge, as her paws were still sipping out from under her, and she was plowed with a pretty nasty hit. Crabrawler was a professional though. He didn't punch her out of the arena, back into it. Suddenly the positioning was opposite. Crabrawler was running around the outside of the ring slowly, and Riolu was in the middle. More frost breath was shot out, slowly layering ice across the entire arena, as Riolu regained her feet, stumbling a bit as she kept threatening to go down. Riolu. Vacuum wave straight down. Break up the ice. She nodded, slamming her fist down, and for a moment nothing happened before the thin sheets of ice cracked all around her, shooting up into the air as the air pressure tore them from the arena. Now. Use vacuum wave to make paths. Chase him down. Riolu shot forward, vacuum wave after vacuum wave breaking the ice in her path as she chased after Crabrawler. Grab her. Hala called, and I nodded. Let him. Then blast him. I roared out, and Riolu nodded, running forward. Crabrawler snatched onto one of her arms, but the other was free, and a vacuum wave was released into Crabrawler's face. Now use brutal swing. Hala called out, and Riolu whined as she started being spun around and then launched into the sky. Watching her spread eagle spinning through the sky was pretty funny actually. Vacuum wave. Use it to guide yourself back down. I yelled as loudly as I could, and to my surprise, Riolu actually listened. Her fists came together, and just like Goku and the Kamehameha, she started firing the blasts off, first slowing herself down and then aiming back for the ring. Oh. You rely on that move quite a bit. Hala called out. Riolu and I focused a lot on building up her special power and practicing this move. She and I don't always get along, but she isn't going to lose to this. And Riolu grunted as her paws came down onto the icy arena. Thankfully she hit hard enough she didn't slip around again. Very well. Power-up punch. Vacuum wave his fist. I called out, and I could sense the momentary confusion before Riolu's fists glowed. Instead of dodging as Crabrawler rushed in, Riolu met him with a fist clad in a vacuum wave, and the two fighting types exploded for a moment. I could see Riolu wince as she took the worst of the attack, but the wave of air forced Crabrawler back. Blast him. I called out, despite Riolu visibly getting tired. Endurance was all well and good, but Riolu had been shooting out vacuum waves constantly for a while. Riolu threw her other fist, even as Crabrawler tried to regain his footing, the ice working against him as he was sent tumbling from the attack before. The second vacuum wave blasted, and there was no traction. A moment later he went flying, not just back, but completely off the arena. I waited for a moment to see how Hala was going to react, but the old man was smiling behind his mustache as he returned his Pokemon. A delightful battle. Your bond with your Pokemon grew throughout the battle. Impressive. Hala called out, and Riolu turned from what he said to look at me. Her tongue stuck out. I stuck my tongue out. As if our bond had grown at all. She was still a brat. I knew Riolu was thinking the same. But then Hala interrupted by releasing his next Pokemon. Oh, that's gonna be trouble. I muttered. The Hariyama that appeared on the arena rocked the rock ring, as he planted his feet, cracking the ice under him and raising his hands ready for battle. Riolu. Fast and ranged. We don't want to get close. That will not work again. Hala called out, and suddenly his arms raised up. Oh. Here we go. Do it. He roared out. AZ move. Riolu, get ready. It's going to be an overwhelming attack. I called out, even if she didn't know Protect, she could try to dodge some of the attack. Quick Attack could dodge at least some of this. I just had to time it. Correct. I am the Kahuna. He roared out as his right leg shot to the sky. Wow, that was a big split. Arceus Hala was flexible for an old guy. His leg slammed, and he took a sumo stance. I make the wills of myself, melee, and Tapu Koko as one. I am the Kahuna. He stomped his other foot exactly in time with Hariyama. Then raised his arms up, and then brought them forward, wrists overlapping for a moment. Then he started punching. His Z-ring began glowing brightly, power flowing from him into his Pokemon. Double fists forward, and he burned with fiery energy. This is the moment where our strength combines into one. He roared, thrusting a palm forward, and the energy jumped from Hala into Hariyama. All out pummeling. Now. Quick attack. Dodge as much as you can. That won't be enough. Hala called out and Hariyama's hands glowed. The palm thrusts were insanely fast, every thrust sent an energy projectile forward and Hariyama knew how to make his attacks accurate. Riolu glowed white, but she was tired, and the ground was icy. She ducked, and rolled leaping around to avoid the projectiles, but eventually she slipped, too slow to regain her legs. Her leg was smashed and she fell forward into the next and then the next attack. She was sent flying skidding along the icy arena. I leapt, just getting in the path as Riolu tumbled back. Her small body slammed into mine and I held her as we both tumbled off the little stage. Ow. I mumbled from the ground, Riolu laying over my chest, her eyes definitely swirling as she was knocked out. Good fight, Riolu. I mumbled as I took a second to just catch my breath. Slowly I rose up and adjusted her, so I could return her with her pokeball. Ha ha ha. A fine catch. Hala called out and I nodded as I climbed back up. Jangmo-o. Your turn. I called out, and he huffed as he skittered a bit to get moving until he was in the arena. His claws kept him from sliding around, but I could tell he didn't like it. He'd been watching the overwhelming power of all-out pummeling. He was buzzing with excitement. The power he'd just seen made him want to copy it. I was wondering what Hala's game was though. He didn't need to use that Z move on Riolu, she was already tired and beat up. There was no need to waste it on her then. But he had anyway. Was he trying to bait me into using my Z move? Was it some trick? Was something else happening? In the end, I just smiled and raised my arm. Jangmo-o. Together. Let's show him what we can do. Jong. He roared his head to the sky as I flipped my wrist, showing the Dragonium Z crystal. I breathed in, feeling that power burn in me. Then I followed the movements. Wide power, double punch, dragon maw, power stance. The purple dragon energy burst out of me, lighting up the arena brighter than the sunlight. Jangmo-o followed, and I watched as Hariyama nodded, looked pleased, right alongside his trainer. I see. It wasn't a trick. This was Alola, the battle culture was different here. It wasn't about winning but learning. Pushing and joining together. I understand. In battle, my Pokemon were never alone. Let it out. Roar to the heavens, Jangmo-o. Devastating Drake. I roared, letting all that energy out, pushing everything I had into Jangmo-o. Let's show Alola the strength of our bond. The power flowed into my little dragon, and he opened his maw. An orb of power appeared, I could feel the energy wafting off it, more powerful than even the orbs that made up Draco Meteor. It shifted, Jangmo-o, and I working together to form the mass of power as suddenly it burst into form, wings stretched out and then the dragon energy mimicked a roar and soared, flapping as it jerked from side to side making it hard to dodge as it honed in on its target. The explosion rocked me back, and I slipped on the icy arena ending up on my but nearly entirely out of gas. Jangmo-o came sliding towards me on his belly, completely flat spinning around clockwise as he slowed down with the squeaking noise like cleaning a window coming from him. Heh. How cute. Oof. I breathed in and out practically gasping as I realized just how bad that had hit me. If Lucario Sucker punched me in the stomach I think it would have done less to take my breath away. The smoke and dust cleared showing Hariyama still standing. He was roughed up, shaking even while standing, but still definitely capable of fighting. I got myself sitting up but the world was still a bit dizzy. Looking over, Jangmo-o was looking at me. I guess that's it for us. I called out, reaching out and grabbing Jangmo-o who just lay limply in my hands as I brought him up to my chest and then flopped back. Ow. Jang. It's okay. We just need more practice. Maybe hold back a little more when we do the Z moves from now on. Ah, so you can learn. Hala said as he stood over me, his Hariyama also helping to block the Alolan sun as they stood over us. It often takes a few times before youngsters learn to stop pushing all of themselves into a Z move. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I said a bit breathless. Going full out has always been a pretty workable strategy in the shounen world of Pokemon so far. Ha ha ha. Hala burst into a great belly laugh as he laughed up at the sky. Are we sure she's not from here? Olivia asked as she walked over and leaned against the side of the arena. Kanto trainer represent. I mumbled tiredly. Ugh. Geez, what a way to take the wind out of my sails. You'll get the hang of it after a while. Here. And I tilted my hand as Hala held out something in his hand for me, which I reached up and took. Phytanium Z? I wondered because. I lost though? Huh. You succeeded quite well. Children usually get weeks to learn how to work through their Z moves before I let them challenge me. You had one day. Still managed a truly devastating Drake. You would have defeated poor Hariyama after if not for being unused to Z moves. Besides, I've spoken to Kukui. I've seen the recordings of the Indigo Conference this year. Your battle skills are not in question. You saw that all the way out here? I asked surprised. Olivia looked confused and looked to Hala who just grinned. Kukui often drags me into watching the best battles he can find. You fought me only with the Pokemon that you could bring with you, and your Riolu. Ah, to see a young fighting type build the bond with their trainer, it fills me with hope for the future. You've proven to me you've succeeded in this battle trial. I rose up with a groan. Poor Jangmo whined a bit but he settled into my arms and huffed as he continued to stay flopped. Thank you Kahuna Hala. Alright Hala, you win. Olivia mentioned with a sigh. I'll give my approval. Nanu abstained, so that's 2-3. Hala nodded at Olivia's words and I looked from the two until Hala reached down and pressed a hand to my shoulder. Young Victoria. Know that Alola is an island of close bonds. We do welcome outsiders, like Principal Oak, but it's rare, and not without truly determining who they are. It was a difficult situation. To have a child appear that had already started the island challenge, yet not be one of ours. It took days of arguments. And tests. Ah, the Drampa thing? And this? That's right. Kukui spoke in your favor, as did Principal Oak. You proved to me with your challenges you have the right spirit. So know this. From this day until your last, Alola is your home as much as Kanto. May you carry the spark of Alolan light with you wherever you go. And be welcome here whenever you need. Wait. What? Huh. What Hala means without all the flowery words kid, is that you're an Alolan now. We adopted you, no take-backs. Olivia offered with a grin, and I looked from the two adults trying to process the words. No need for confusion. One can't take an island challenge, and not be Alolan, so like those who immigrate here, you are now a full Alolan in our eyes. Hala explained and honestly that really just meant one thing for me. So. Does that mean I don't have to follow the restrictions on Pokemon, and can transfer my friends? Because that was what it sounded like. Of course. How could an Alolan trainer not be welcome to travel with her own Pokemon? Hala offered with a wink, and I was suddenly vibrating full of energy. You won't regret this. I need to go to the Pokemon Center. Long distance transfer is slow, but everyone is going to love the beach. Well okay, maybe you'll regret it a little, but I promise it'll be great. Blue Heart is going to love it here. Why do I feel I'm missing something? Olivia asked, and Hala actually smiled. Worry not Olivia, I know what young Victoria is talking about. I believe it will be an interesting surprise. Hala said and then full belly chuckled. Olivia gave him a look as if she wasn't amused but shrugged. It's your island. All I could do was smile as the two kahunas snarked at each other, because this meant I could bring my friends to Alola. I could go swimming with Blue Heart and Milotic. Go flying and play with Dragonite. Run around in the sand with Arcanine, and hug Blissey. This was wonderful. Come, I see that you are excited to transfer your friends, let's head to the Pokemon Center to get your registration changed. Hala offered and I nodded my head practically blurring up and down at the offer. Thank you Grandpa Roy. Oh it's no issue. We signed up for it. A long distance transfer isn't that difficult. The older man confirmed on the phone as Nurse Joy finished starting the transfer of my Pokemon. Since Lucario was here under Papa's limits, that left me an extra space for someone to stay. I'd considered Riolu and Jangmo-o, both of them had fought well, but when I'd talked with my team, Riolu had been oddly interested in going home. Jangmo-o had still been tuckered out and so he'd been fine either way. Mimikyu wanted to go back to get a different outfit. I think he was going to show off his Milotic costume with how fluffy he had been acting. I considered keeping Gibble since she'd been enjoying the water so much, but there was water at home and a flock of Milotic to play with her. And Dratini had been very happy to hear his mama and papa could come, so it had been an easy choice in the end. I slipped my 5 Pokeballs into the slots, and Nurse Joy transferred them out, and then I waited, and waited, and waited. It's only been a minute. Long-distance transfers like from Kanto to Alola can take up to 30 minutes. Why not grab a snack? Nurse Joy asked rather pointedly as I was practically bouncing, and obviously bothering her. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Sorry. I hurried over to the food area. I just wanted to see everyone. Chapter 103. It's normal for it to take a while. Nurse Joy once more said, and I nodded as I turned back to the machine she'd promised the balls would be delivered through. I just was getting a bit antsy, no reason. It wasn't like my best friends were being transferred electronically from halfway across the planet through basically dial-up internet. Okay, it wasn't actually dial-up. The Pokemon centers used a crazy schizotech Pokemon internet connection. It just took longer when it was from Kanto to Alola. I was so nervous. Suddenly the machine lit up, and lights began blinking and I stood up from the chair looking from the machine to Nurse Joy who'd been slowly losing her patience with me, and she sent me a flat look, but walked over and checked a monitor. Yes, these are your Pokemon. Just let the transfer device finish confirming the data. She then stood for a moment as slowly one by one a Pokeball appeared out of sparkles of light just like the light Pokeballs used to return Pokemon, and then all 5 were there. Transfer complete. Please take your Pokemon. And get out was left unsaid. Thank you, Nurse Joy. I called out, grabbing the Pokeballs the moment she opened the device, not even waiting for her to put them on a tray as I just threw them onto my belt and then rushed outside. I grabbed one and chucked it, watching the white Pokeball head up and then down before releasing. Arc. I heard, and barely managed to open my mouth to call out for Arcanine when I was tackled. Pfft. Bleg. Ugh. Arcanine. I managed to get out as I was welcomed with lots of slobbery doggy kisses. Arcanine, too excited by far, didn't stop and continued to pin me to the ground, showering me in licks. I reached up and did the only thing I could. I wrapped my hands around her snout and pressed it closed. Which didn't really solve the problem as her tongue was still stuck out and licking at me. I'm happy to see you too, but I didn't need your tongue in my mouth, I told her, still spitting to the side. This of course didn't bother Arcanine, who just gave me happy doggy smiles, and I could feel her entire body shifting left and right as her tail wagged excitedly. Alola. I greeted her, and finally the weird word gave me a moment as she tilted her head to the side. It's a greeting here. Welcome to Alola. I told her, and she looked up and around, finally meaning I could let go of her, as I stood up and wiped my face a bit. Yuck. Arcanine? She seemed to ask, and I noticed her fur ripple a bit as it puffed out. Right, she was in her winter coat. Is it too hot? There's a beach over there, we can go jump in the ocean. She denied and just stayed all puffed up with her tail wagging. Well, she's a fire type, she'll be fine. Before she could do anything like run off, I reached out and grabbed her cheeks and pushed my forehead against hers. Missed you. She responded, her tongue once more coming out to try and lick me. Yeah. I stepped back and grinned as I charged around and leapt onto her back. To the beach. And we blasted away. The small crowd of people that had stopped to see an Arcanine in all her glory were shocked as she practically disappeared. A buzzing along my skin told me extreme speed had been used, and within moments, we were suddenly in the sky as Arcanine had hit the beach barrier and leapt off. As we were flying through the sky towards the water, I would put money on her tongue sticking out happily at running for all of a moment before she realized she had overjumped. She yelped and I could feel her shift as she tried to stop from hitting the water. This is your Foblerg. We hit the water with a massive splash and soon everything was spinning water and fur as Arcanine tumbled and spun in the water. I pushed away and managed to get to the surface as I turned and watched her doggy paddle desperately for the beach. "You're such a..." I said it was a beach. I called out, as I watched her make it to the sand. I just grabbed a pokeball from my hip and released it. "My." This one didn't care that it was an ocean, and Milotic instantly attacked me, wrapping me up in his coils until he and I were buoyant on the water, and then rubbing his cheek against me. Considering his head was bigger than my entire body, it was a very vigorous greeting. "Alola to you too, fishy wishy." I hugged him back, just so happy to have my friends with me again. Sure, it hadn't been very long, but it had been forced. I couldn't just go see them, or something. Something distance and the heart growing fonder. "Come on, we need to get back to the beach. I don't want Arcanine bothering anyone," I called out after a while. Milotic trailed and soon I was on his back as he swam back to the beach, reaching it in seconds, and letting me slide into the sand. As I thought, Arcanine was getting a lot of attention, and most of it not good. "Arcanine, how many times have I told you not to shake around people?" I called out, wincing as Arcanine had of course tried to shake off the water, and the poor beachgoers, most of them sunbathing, had been absolutely soaked. "Sorry. I'm really sorry. She's kind of an idiot." I apologized. "Canine. Well, don't do stupid things then," I told her, as she tried to deny it. Arcanine huffed and looked away. "Go find Papa Arcanine, he should be that way," I told her, giving her a task that would keep her out of trouble and some place to run to. "Arc." She agreed and turned, and then in a blur of kicked up sand. Fuck, she just hit me and all the people with sand now too. "I'm really sorry." I apologized only to get glared at by a bikini-clad woman as she glared at me from one eye as she wiped sand that was now caked to her from her face. "I've never in my life," she complained, and I just winced and looked to Milotic, who caught my issue and nodded. He pulled up, looming over the woman, who startled in surprise, and then he put on the charm. "Me? Milo?" he questioned, flashing his pretty eyes and tail, letting it hit the sunlight as he lowered down so he wasn't above her, but beside the woman, and asking her plaintively if she was okay. "Oh my. What is this Pokemon?" she asked, startled, and I grinned knowing that tone of voice. Once more my Chad had won over another woman. Truly he was unstoppable. "This is Milotic. They're called the most beautiful Pokemon in the world. See how his scales shimmer? He's such a pretty boy." "Yes, he's beautiful. I've heard Gym Leader Wallace had a Milotic and it was extraordinarily beautiful. But this? Hee hee. Thanks. Milotic is the best. Oh, I simply must have a picture," she said, and I sighed as we managed to distract her, but now it was photo op time. I looked at Milotic, who just blinked his big red eyes at me. Yeah, he was fine with it. Racing in the surf while riding Milotic, I finally spotted Mama and Papa. Both of them were relaxing back. Although the Pokemon weren't. Rockruff looked like he was partially knocked out in the sand, and Meowth was clinging to Mama's shoulders and hissing whenever Arcanine looked her way. Arcanine was begging at Papa's lap for the malasada he was eating. I rolled my eyes as Milotic pulled out of the surf and slid among the sand for a moment, letting me step off. As I came closer. "What happened here?" Rockruff challenged Arcanine. Papa explained casually. "She handled it very well. I'm impressed." Rockruff grumbled from the sand, his nose half buried as he blew out in a huff, sending a puff of sand away. "Although I'll admit having your pup rush at me when she's supposed to be in Kanto was a surprise," Papa said, and I felt the censure in his words. "I got permission," I called out, waving my hands in front of me. "I fought Hala for my grand trial. He won, but he said I did well enough, it was okay." "Wait, you lost a battle? Here?" "Well, Jangmo and I are still working on our Z move so we don't pass out, and Riolu fought well, but Hala is a fighting type specialist." "Then why'd you use her? Shouldn't you use something strong against fighting?" "It wasn't a gym challenge like in Kanto, Papa. Alolans do things differently here. It was more about showing off the bond between me and my Pokemon." Okay, I'll admit Riolu was still probably not the best choice, but she fought well. I think we learned a lot going against a fighting trainer. I looked at Lucario as I said it. She was sitting on another beach chair and casually drinking from a cup with a little umbrella in it. She gave me a nod and the mimicry of a thumbs up. Alright, and so? The kahuna let you bring your Pokemon over? Mama asked, getting me back on track. Yeah. According to the kahuna, I'm basically a citizen of Alola now. He said I'd always be welcome on the island. That's... wow. Papa added and Mama nodded, but she looked a little concerned. Is there anything he expects? I don't want you getting involved in some Alolan war or something. She offered, and since I didn't know the answer, I shrugged, but then I added, anyone stupid enough to try and conquer Alola is going to have bigger things than me to worry about. The Tapu aren't jokes. Tapu? Mama asked, and I nodded. They're Alola's legendary Pokemon. There are 4 of them and they're each crazy strong. It's nothing to worry about, they keep to themselves unless they see a trainer they want to fight. I said and then instantly looked around. I did have my main team with me now. Would the Tapu jump out and challenge me now? But there was nothing, so I went back to Mama. It's okay. I'm sure Hala will be able to explain what the details are. Because the important part is that my friends are here for a vacation day. Arcanine barked, but that made Papa look down and notice she was licking at his Masalada. Bad dog, he said, and Arcanine crumpled. Soon she was in the sand just like Rockruff, both of them pouting. Dogs. Instead of worrying about that, I patted Milotic's nose, and then released my next Pokemon. Blissey. She greeted, bouncing in the sand a bit, and while Mama and Papa called out hello, I jumped into her arms with as tight a hug as I could. Alola Blissey. I called out and felt nothing but happiness as she hugged me back just as hard. Maybe a bit too hard. Ack. Blissey. I wheezed and she let me go, laughing, telling me she had done it on purpose. Welcome to Alola. I told her as well, and she nodded, looking around, and I could see her eyes light up at the ocean that practically sparkled. Blissey. Yeah, it's wonderful here. We can even come back. I'll tell you all about it later. Bliss. She agreed, and took 2 steps towards Mama and Papa to greet them before her feet shifted and she approached Rockruff. Well, Blissey would heal him up, and maybe he'd stop pouting. I grabbed my next Pokeball, and Dragonite blinked as she appeared, then she looked around and stretched out towards the sun. Dragonite. Drag. She purred, looking very happy. Also very round. Oh my god. Preggers. I screamed, unable to help myself as I pointed a shaking finger at the 2 round Dragonite. She demurred, putting her hands to her cheeks and acting shy, even as she strutted on the sand, showing off her rounded belly. What? Mama called out as she rose up and hurried over, and I looked from Mama to Dragonite. Dragonite has another egg. Milotic said faux casual as he slithered over and wrapped himself around his wife. Okay, I'm releasing Dratini. He has to see this. Dragonite beamed as I pulled out the next Pokeball, and soon a happy trill echoed around the beach as Dratini climbed, both his mother and father happily rubbing against them, both just happy to see them. Which is when Dragonite preed and rubbed her belly, explaining to Dratini what was going on. There was a moment of silence as Dratini's fins spread out in surprise, and he looked from Dragonite down to her belly and back up, then back down. Teeny. He cheered and flowed down to press his cheek against Dragonite's belly, for a moment, before he came away chittering so fast I couldn't even make out what he said, but Dragonite liked what she heard and was soon hugging Dratini and Milotic in a big family hug. It's just so wonderful. I couldn't help but say as my eyes were already watering. What a happy little family. Soon Dragonite was sitting beside Lucario and enjoying the sun. Considering it was snowing in Kanto right now, it must feel amazing to have all this warmth. Milotic and Dratini were playing, with Dratini curled up on his father's head as they moved around. Rockruff was fighting with Arcanine, who was obviously enjoying a battle. Blissey had her own beach chair and was actually relaxing for once. Just like Lucario, she too had a little drink with an umbrella. And then I walked out into the ocean a bit further away from where my parents were. I pulled out my final Pokeball. I didn't want to keep him for last, but I knew that once I released him he'd be getting all the attention. Come on out, Blue Heart. The sound of water being displaced was noticeable, as he sank into the waters, and sand his bulk simply too much for the poor beach. And then he was there, his eyes lowering down onto me. I saw his eyes dilate, and then he charged forward. I opened my arms, and soon had a full press Garrido's hug into the sand. I could feel slobber on my legs as he hadn't quite managed to keep himself from opening his mouth. We'd worked on it, but he was still very excitable. Alola Blue Heart. I missed you so much. I told him as he continued to rub against me, pushing me a bit into the sand. Not the most comfortable, but for this it was worth it. Hey. A voice called out and I could hear the concern. Crap. Come on. Up Blue Heart. Up. I told him, and he pulled away, letting me stand up and look around. There were a few beachgoers looking shocked and looking like they were going to rush over with pokeballs in their hands, before I stood up and wiped myself down, and then reached up to Blue Heart's big face and gave him a big hug. Want to go for a swim? I asked him and got a rumbling purr, as I ignored everyone else, and simply climbed up his face, until I was resting on his crest. Now. To the ocean. I called out loudly, and screamed out a delighted laugh as he jerked forward and we just crashed into the waves. I quickly grabbed my rebreather from my bag and pointed down so Blue Heart knew it was safe to go under. Then we were under the waves. Just the two of us. Well, and the hordes of water Pokemon that quickly started swimming away at the appearance of a Gyarados. We swam a bit down from the sandy beach until we hit coral reefs, and there I pushed away a bit from Blue Heart, getting his attention as he shifted to look at me, and then we were swimming next to each other. He barely moved at all, to keep up, but I showed him around, pointing out things and just spending time with my lonely boy. We spiraled around each other in the warm Alolan waters, just like how we had that first time we met in the dark river water of Kanto. Once in a while a random swimmer would cross our path and very quickly shoot away, which had me laughing. But I get it. Gyarados were still feared, but we'd work on that. Reaching out I patted his cheek, earning an underwater rumble of happiness. It was time to get out of here. I climbed back on top of his head and then I brought my hand down so he could see and then shot it up. Then I held on. Blue Heart glowed a bit as he began dragon dancing. As he shifted and coiled, powering himself up, and then I huddled behind his crest as he jerked upwards. The water smashing down on me was heavy, but soon we broke the surface and just kept on going. Only once the forces evened out did I take out my rebreather and shout to the sky. Yeah! I cried out and Blue Heart's rumble joined me as we swam from one ocean to another. Blue Heart was the king of both after all. Kahuna Hala. It's rare for you to allow a foreigner to join us like that. Kukui remarked, as always his former apprentice was a bit too quick to notice things. There are many reasons why I voted for it. It solved the problem of a foreign island challenger. It also gives some precedence for foreign Pokemon from Alola that are capable of handing out Z crystals to technically still be Alolan Pokemon. Right? Kukui remarked with a smirk, and Hala sighed. Kukui didn't often speak on politics, but the boy had been his apprentice for many years. Indeed. If we ensure it is law that even stolen Alolan Pokemon are still of Alola, then we have more reasons to request them returned, or to rehome them. Poaching is becoming more common. The Kahuna have been attempting to come up with ways to mitigate it when it happens. Don't like you using a kid like Vicky for this sort of stuff, but she's also gotten a lot out of it. So I won't complain. Hala sent his Kukui a look, and the man had the grace to look a bit apologetic. Kukui was a professor and well respected, but Hala was the Kahuna. His word was law. So you think we'll be seeing her again once she leaves? Kukui asked, and Hala rumbled. I believe it is likely. She grasps our ways quickly. Like she was born here, like she has walked this path before. The kid is quick. This TM thing we've been looking into is fascinating, but I suppose if you have a Dragonite nothing is ever that far. Indeed. I expect we will see Dragonite flying over our island soon. She did hurry off to transfer her Pokemon. Transfer her Pokemon, huh? Wait. Kukui looked over at Hala, his eyes wide. You didn't put any restrictions on her? No. She is of Alola, It would be against our own laws. Well, crap. We should head to the beach. To keep everyone calm. You watched her conference battles, didn't you? A few. She impressed me, but dash. You missed the first one then. The one where she opened the conference with a flying Gyarados? Gyarados. Can fly? Kahuna. A voice cried out, and Hala stood and headed out of his home, where he could see a good chunk of Melee Island from his front porch. There he could already see young Kula pointing up at the sky. It seems young Kukui was correct. Well now. That's going to certainly get a reaction. Kukui offered with a chuckle, but Hala noticed as usual the man's eyes were locked onto the Pokemon drifting in the sky above Melee. It looked peaceful from so far away, but Hala knew that there would be a reaction. He sighed. Perhaps he should have done a bit more preparation? Come on, old man. I want to see this. Kukui called out, already hurrying off. Hala turned. He'd grab his little car. It would be faster. Chapter 104. I kicked my legs as the warm Alolan sun beat down on me, wind rushing past my face. This was what it was all about. Blue Heart made a happy rumbling noise as I continued to rub his scales as we flew around in circles, high above the beach. I'm happy too, I told him, smiling as we floated along. Too bad it was probably time to head down. We probably should get back, Blue Heart. As much as I love flying with you, we can't just do it all day. My words had an instant effect. He rumbled, shifting from his large circles through the air as he started descending. As we came down, I noticed that Mama and Papa weren't alone. In fact, I waved a bit as I came down at Kahuna. Hala and Kukui were both standing next to my parents and Pokemon. Alola, I called out, as Blue Heart touched down, splashing a bit into the waves, but his head landed gently in the sand, and I jumped off, plopping into the soft sand for a moment before turning and giving Blue Heart a big hug. Then I turned to the Kahuna and Professor. Alola, young Victoria. Hala offered, but it was Kukui that moved close without fear to join me in front of Blue Heart. Alola, Vicky. Wow, he really is docile, isn't he? Can I? He asked me, holding out a hand, and I looked to Blue Heart, who was just happily flapping his tail back and forth, seemingly uncaring that Kukui even existed, his eyes locked on me. Yeah, come scratch here, it's an itchy spot. I explained as I guided Kukui's hand to a spot behind Blue Heart's horns where he couldn't just rub against something if he itched. To my delight, Blue Heart actually responded well, only grumbling a bit, but out of relief as Kukui's hand scratched at his blue scales. Ho, I've never gotten a chance to examine Gyarados before. They're usually difficult to work with. Blue Heart is the best, I explained, and Kukui grinned as Blue Heart looked over at him, big eyes looking at this strange man, but then he just relaxed at the feeling, obviously enjoying being scratched. I'd need to get a bristle brush out and give my poor big noodle boy a thorough scrub in all his itchy spots. Is the secret to angry Gyarados all the itchies? I wondered aloud, but shook that off. No, that was silly. I reached up to check his itchy spots to make sure they were nice and scratched. Just in case. Well, Kukui? Hala suddenly called out, stepping closer, but not quite into Blue Heart reach range. Docile, I don't see any issues. Good. Hala offered, and the old man did a little sigh with his shoulder slump. Wait. You said you knew about my team. I accused him, and he looked away a little embarrassed. I didn't watch all of your conference battles. Kukui only shared a few of them. I looked at the older man and couldn't help but snicker a little. Before I stopped and slapped my face a bit. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh that much. I know people don't react well to Gyarados. I want people to see how much of a sweetheart he is, but I don't really want to scare them. Everything okay? We are Alolan. There was some shock from some of the visitors, but there was no great issue. The sight of a flying Gyarados will be a wonderful story for our visitors. Hala offered in exchange, surprising me with how accepting he was. But perhaps let's allow everyone to grow used to your Gyarados before any more surprises? Sure. Sorry. I said, not really feeling all that sorry, but it was sort of the right thing to say. You want others to learn about Gyarados? Kukui asked, and I blinked at the sudden words as I noticed he was still checking over Blue Heart, exploring with his hands. Yes? It makes me angry that Magikarp and Gyarados are treated so badly. Gyarados aren't bad. They're just. They have a tough life as a Magikarp. If Magikarp are treated correctly, then Gyarados are very good boys. And girls. I added. Then I have a perfect idea. The Pokemon School is all about learning about Pokemon. Oh. You want to do a class on Gyarados? I asked, shocked. Pinpoint. He said, pointing at me with a grin. I'm fine with that. I agreed, and Kukui looked pleased, and Hala nodded, rubbing at his chin. A rare learning experience. I agree. There are Gyarados in the Alolan waters. Learning how to work with them could be a very useful knowledge for the future. Yeah. We just have to learn about Gyarados, so people will be less scared of them. Then we can teach people how to raise them, and they're the best. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I sweet-talked Blue Heart as I mushed his face, and that made his tail splash into the waves all the harder as he enjoyed the attention. Well, how about tomorrow's class then? Kukui asked, and I nodded. That would work. Great. Well, I'm going to keep playing with my friends. I called out, running over to Arcanine, who was laying on top of Rockruff as the poor puppy had been bullied into defeat. She sent me a look as I raced towards her, but I didn't stop as I leapt and flying tackled my big dog. No bully. I roared as I just managed to push her aside, freeing Rockruff, and then we each started fighting back against Arcanine, who held an outrageous Rockruff, and I double-teamed Arcanine. Things were great. Okay, here you go. I passed out some snacks to all my team. Alolan Malasada was a nice treat, and each of the Pokemon were chowing down as I settled them on the beach. It had taken a lot of work to get all of them fed without my usual stuff, but Alola had stores and things, so the vacation had gotten a little more expensive for a bit, but at least my friends were all happily full and enjoying their dessert. Meowth was still sticking to Mom, I noticed, and was even cuddled up on her lap as she fed him. What a lazy cat. I'd have to talk to my parents and the Pokemon soon about what to do about it. I'd probably just capture the two and send them home, and they could pick them up then. But we weren't leaving yet, so I'll leave it for now. The sun was starting to set, but the beach was still active. Older Alolan teenagers had started appearing as the visitors left, and surfing and parties had built up across the beach. It's really a Gyarados, just look at it. Yeah, but it's docile. Well trained, Hala said not to worry about it. I heard the discussion as I headed back from the Malasada shop. Blue Heart was happily napping half on the warm sands. I'd been forced to push him back a bit farther into the water so he wouldn't dry out, as he really had been too far out of the water to hang around me. Luckily Dratini had kept him company while I grabbed food. Little Noodle wrapped around his horn, happily chattering to him about the trip. Those two were so cute together. I'm glad Dratini and Blue Heart had become friends. And there you go. I passed a drink to Mama as I finally solved all the food issues. Thank you, Vicky. Mama offered back her hand, flopping onto my hair and patting me. It's nice that you have your battler team, but I'll admit feeding and taking care of the smaller ones were easier. Yeah. I muttered as I flopped into the sand. Blissey was literally napping in her beach chair near my parents, but otherwise the rest of my team were all doing something. Arcanine was still playing with Rockruff off and on. Dragonite and Milotic had been exploring the water together, but it was nice just to be around my friends. Yo! Check this out. I looked over and frowned. Team Skull. It was the first time I'd been bothered by them. Sure, I'd seen them around, but they hadn't done anything to me. But right now, a group of 4 of them were approaching Blue Heart. I felt myself locking in, because if they bothered by precious Blue Heart, Hyper Beam would be the least of the troubles I'd introduce them to. But instead of doing anything too bad, one of them sort of got close, and when Blue Heart only barely paid attention to them as Dratini was still chattering, he turned and, oh god, not the gang signs. But a camera was brought out, and a picture was taken. Mama looked at me, wondering if I was going to do anything, but that actually wasn't a bad thing. I stood up and brushed the sand off my beach shorts and jogged over. Hey! I called out, and before I could say anything more, they formed ranks. We weren't doing nothing. I got a response back and the 4 troublemakers looked ready to throw pokeballs. Not really smart while standing with their backs to Blue Herd, because he was now scoping them out. Nah, you're fine. I called out as I got close and walked past them to pat Blue Heart's face to get him to relax. But if you want pictures, you should climb up. His horn is a great seat. I offered and got 4 pairs of eyes all blinking in surprise at the offer. They looked from me to the Garrido staring at them, and I could see the collective swallow the 4 had. Come on. I offered, making a motion for them to climb up. I did my best to make sure my smile wasn't turning a bit predatory. I didn't really hate Team Skull, sure they were jerks sometimes, but mostly they were just idiot teenagers. Yeah, fine. The bravest of the lot agreed and his buddies all started cheering him on. Yeah. Do it, Kono. You're the BOMB. So cool, Kono. Screamed the girl of the troop, which had Blue Heart rumble a bit. He didn't like the way she screamed, and she went silent. Heh. The boy hesitated, but I waved him forward. Here, step here. I pointed at the top of his lip, even wiggling my hand against it a bit to show. Then climb onto the horn. Just don't step on his eye or something. Right. He whispered and then moved, slowly moving to reach up and grab the horn, hesitating before touching it, and then slowly relaxing as Blue Heart just blinked at him. Then he stepped and at my guidance he was up. Whoa. The other 3 whispered as Kono settled on the horn and looked around. Then the others started cheering and Blue Heart grumbled a bit, but it was a happy noise. Alright, who wants the other side? I bet that would be a cool picture. Me. To my surprise, after helping the Team Skull guys get their picture, they were surprisingly nice when they thanked me for letting them do it. In the end, I'd made some acquaintances of sorts and they wandered off talking about how cool their pictures were with the Garridos. I ended up setting up camp on the beach, listening to the music played by the Alolan late-night surfers and beach bums, surrounded by my friends. The hotel room would be too small for Arcanine, much less Milotic. So we were all just camped around a fire we'd set up, for that extra bit of warmth, and I snuggled into Arcanine's fur, something I'd done so many times I fell asleep nearly instantly. Waking up, I spent a while getting my friends breakfast, before heading back into the hotel to take a shower and clean up, before heading out. I had class today, but I certainly wasn't going to walk. I could release Arcanine. I could release Dragonite. I could do lots of things. So I of course released Blue Heart. Climbing on, he did a little dance and we were off into the sky, an early morning flight that had him rumbling so very happily at the fact we could do it. I'm glad we can fly now too. I shouldn't have tried to keep it hidden for so long. Sure, it was amazing to show you off during the conference, but morning flights together would have been amazing too. I told him as I guided him towards the Pokemon school. The honest words as I stroked his scales reminded me that I wasn't perfect. I could be greedy or make plans that were stupid just for some big thing. I often tried to do something big and grand when I should just relax and let things happen naturally. I was easily excitable, I guess. We flew over the forest, and Blue Heart slowly came down, startling a few bird Pokemon from the trees as we just barely brushed them as he flew over the school's racing track. I'm not sure why it was Tauros racing in particular that was so popular on Alola. They had Mudsdales as well, and that wasn't even touching on all the other Pokemon that would be fun to race around a track as well. But all the students were in class already, but that didn't stop me. Right there, buddy. I called out, and grinned as Blue Heart rumbled out an acceptance, as we approached the classroom level. The whole building was a fun circular architecture, and the rooms were open and bright. I grinned as I could hear voices, including Professor Kukui as Blue Heart reached the level of the classroom, and then began swimming around in circles. Is that a Gyarados? I heard from inside and grinned as we came around and all the students could see me. Kukui was smirking as he waved towards me. We have an important guest for today's class, as it's about a Pokemon that's usually difficult to have a first-hand experience with. Vicky, and her Gyarados. Huhuea. I heard shrieked out from inside, as a blue-haired girl was already rushing for the rails around the class as if she was going to jump on. Heh. That was Lana, I think? I instead jumped off, landing without issue on the classroom floor and smiling as I waved. Alola. Alodash. Huhua. Lana practically tackled me as she raced up right into my face. Oh, hi Dash. How is your Gyarados flying? Were you riding it? You can ride Gyarados. The blue-haired girl was so excited, practically shaking me around until Professor Kukui reached over and hauled her back. Easy Lana. He called out, still laughing as she realized she had been shaking me and her face turned red. Let's all be polite with our guest. Sorry. She yelped out, covering her face, but I just laughed and smiled. It's okay. I love that someone is so excited about Blue Heart. Here. Come on down. I called out as Blue Heart had continued to circle the structure, but when he came back around he slowed and came in with a bit too much oomph still, but sort of ended up floating off the balcony, and probably destroying the railing. Kukui looked at me, as I turned to him slowly, looking sorry. It's fine. Not the first time. He offered after a moment and dropped a heavy hand onto my head. It's so big. The green-haired girl called out. Yes, Gyarados are known for being rather large. Now before we get into that, let's do some introductions. Kukui called out, and I was inundated with everyone's name and information. I definitely lost track of it all, but I knew them all anyway, so I just laughed and waved. I'm Vicky. Well, Victoria Ferrous, but just call me Vicky. I'm from Kanto. While I could tell there was some questions about me, Sophocles was already looking at Professor Kukui and asking questions. That's true, Gyarados are usually very dangerous, but this is a unique situation. Now, can anyone tell me whether this is a boy or girl? Professor Kukui called out and had everyone looking between each other for a moment before the smallest boy raised a hand. Sophocles? A boy? Correct. Kukui called out, pointing, and the boy relaxed. The color of a magic carp, or Gyarados' whiskers, indicate its gender. Kukui waved at the Blue Heart, who was looking over the little crowd mostly with disinterest. Even if Lana, practically buzzing as she stood in front of him, was making him confused. Feel free to get closer. I told Professor Kukui as I stepped up to his face and mushed his lips to show it was safe. Professor Kukui stepped forward first, and gently rested a hand on the scale, scratching, and when Blue Heart didn't react he continued. Honestly, his lesson was really good. Not just about moves or abilities, or things, but in habitat and handling. Of course the question came to what I knew it would. What about the flying? I've never seen a flying Gyarados before. Or someone that could ride one. Lily, of all students, called out. Great question, Lily. Well, honestly, the knowledge is something I don't know either, but we do have an expert, if she's willing to share. Professor Kukui turned to me, letting me take the floor if I wanted. Well, all Gyarados are flying types. I began, and he broke into a bright smile as I continued petting Blue Heart as I spoke. I've always been in love with Magikarp and Gyarados, I just think they're really great. So when I decided to capture a Magikarp, I did a lot of training with him. What kind of training? Kiawe asked, and I smiled at the older boy. Waterfall training. A Magikarp that can climb up the waterfall, crosses over the Dragon Gate, and becomes a Gyarados. Or at least Blue Heart did. It took a lot of training to build up speed and power, and Blue Heart made the leap, and evolved, and just didn't stop. Whoa. Lana gasped out, and Lily looked on with wide eyes too. Huh. That's really interesting. Kukui added, his eyes sharp as he looked at Blue Heart. That's why you think your Gyarados is so docile? Uh-huh. Most Magikarp evolve through anger, but Blue Heart wasn't angry when he evolved. His heart is lighter, so he can fly. I said, laughing at the funny look I got from Lily and Sophocles. I'm kidding. Sort of. Maybe because he naturally flew as he evolved he learned how, and most Gyarados just never learn. Or maybe it was a method of his evolution, or it could just be that we trained in speed so much while he was a Magikarp that he was naturally able to fly. We still have to use Dragon Dance a few times to give him the oomph to start flying. Hey, now that's good information. Kukui added with a snap. Multiple theories, and things that can be tested. Thanks. I think I'll probably do some sort of test with Professor Seras at some point. I added, and Kukui sent me a faux hurt look. Not with your favorite professor. That's a real sucker punch. Heh. If you want to get involved, I'm down, but don't you specialize more in Pokemon moves? Huh. You got me. He said with a laugh, and his students all rolled their eyes. The laughter continued for a moment before Lana scooted past Kukui. Can I pet him? And get a ride? She said, adding the second bit in a rush. Of course you can touch him, a ride would be up to Professor Kukui, you are in class after all. I added, and that earned Kukui the entire group's attention as they sent him pleading looks. Except Lily, I noticed. Alright, we can have a hands-on portion for today. It's not every day you all get to touch a Gyarados without immediately running away. All the students looked about ready to swamp me at Kukui's words, but he waved them down. Hey, calm down. Let's do it a line, okay? So I slowly introduced the class to Blue Heart, and got to delight in their reactions to touching his scales, and Lana was even brave enough to play with his face, earning a grumbled noise and a lick that had her laughing in delight. Then it was Lily's turn, and while she reached out to try and touch him, I can't. I'm sorry. She cried out and flinched away, causing all of the students to huddle around her trying to support her while Kukui looked on with a remorseful look on his face. He glanced at me, after a moment. Lily is a great student, but she has a fear of touching Pokemon. I see that. I whispered back to keep it quiet. There was no quick fix for Lily. She'd need to. Was it her Alolan Vulpix in an egg that broke it? Or was it Ash's Pikachu? I know that was something. I shrugged. There would be a day it would happen. Honestly, I'm just surprised that Lily was around my age. I couldn't help but wonder how the timeline was supposed to fit together. Stupid anime Ash, and him never getting older. There wasn't much to do about it, other than just live my life how I felt best. Alright, who is going for a ride on a Gyarados first? Kukui called out, once Lily was comforted, and soon I was taking kids around the school. I'll see you tomorrow then. I told Kukui, who nodded. Tomorrow, we should have more information on the TM situation as well. Thank you for coming. Oh, it was nothing. Blue Heart had a lot of fun. I assured him, as I settled onto his horns. I waved goodbye as we took off into the sky. That was fun. I told Blue Heart as we settled down on the ocean just past the school. He was getting a bit tired. While he'd done plenty of gravity training, he never spent just all day in the air before. So when he splashed into the water, he let out a sigh, and almost his entire body disappeared beneath the waves. Just his head sticking out as we slowly started swimming along the coast. It was still early afternoon, and I still had the whole rest of the day. I still wanted to go swimming with Milotic and Dratini at some point. I knew Blissey, and I just had to go visit one of the Alolan dances or something. She'd love that. Dragonite was honestly perfectly content just lazing around, as preggers as she was. Then there was Arcanine. Other than a good battle, she probably needed some exercise. Maybe I'd bug Kukui? He was a strong battler. Or Hala? Could I do a rematch against Hala? I bet that would be fun. Oh. I should spend some time teaching my team about Z moves. I bet Arcanine would love to learn Breakneck Blitz. Hee hee. Idea implanted. I now had a fun idea to do with all my friends. Probably best to do everything else first, or else I might pass out practicing a Z move with Arcanine. Let's get to the beach, Blue Heart. He grunted in agreement and we were off. Another day under the Alolan sun. Chapter 105. Alright, do you got it? I asked, and Arcanine huffed, her breath snorting out of her nose as she was ready. Or at least she thought she was. I nodded, and we looked down the beach. We'd gotten an empty spot to practice. Arms crossed in front of me, and my Z-ring lit up glowing fiercely. Arms out, then back and wrists crossed, both arms to my right side, and then my left going wide, fist into my navel, other fist up to my forehead. The Z-power erupted from me, surging forth the light show, catching the eyes of the beachgoers, as Arcanine burst into a golden aura. Go! Breakneck Blitz! I roared out, and Arcanine did in fact go. The sound of a sonic boom echoed out across the sands, along with Arcanine's howl of utter pleasure. And then she was simply gone. A trench carved in the sand exploding outward as the Z move activated, and she blurred away faster than any extreme speed. I unfortunately didn't get to see much more than that as I face planted into the sand. My limbs felt like noodles, and it still felt like something had kicked me in the chest, air coming only with a struggle. I still gave too much of myself, I realized. That's what Hala meant. I just needed to hold back a bit more. The Z move was already a lot of power, pushing as much as I could into it only made it so I couldn't do anything. Bliss? Gungle. I muttered around the sand and Blissy tittered as I was lifted from the sand gently and then thrown over her shoulder. Bliss bliss. She sing-songed as she jogged down the beach along the trench. Nice move. Haha. Looks like it was a bit too much still. Keep working on it. I heard the beachgoers, the Alolans anyways, cheering in delight at what Arcanine had done, but I was too weak to even respond back. I would definitely have to figure this Z-move thing out. Feeling this tired really sucked. Finally Bliss stopped and I could hear Arcanine. Woo 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 woo. She complained and Blissy made a clicking noise. I was pulled free and plopped down, resting against Arcanine's upright belly, as I realized my pup had somehow ended up on her back legs in the air. I looked around weakly and noticed the sand was a mess around the area and... Did you trip? I asked, only to instantly receive a howling denial. Woo-woo. She argued, but it was a little too strenuous. Breakneck Blitz could have her trip. Good to know. We'd have to practice more, but honestly, this was pretty good for a first time. We got the Z-move to work, so that's good enough. I told Arcanine, who stopped fussing, and I could feel her tail wagging. Even if she seemed too tired to move, that tail still had a mind of its own. That was pretty good. I looked up weakly, and had to blink. Was that a Lapras? Wah! I gasped, sort of did the worm for a second as I tried to stand but failed. Lapras. So cute. I cried out, but couldn't move. Lana just started laughing from on top of Lapras's back. Pearl here is a ride Pokemon, you can actually rent her from the marina if you want. Lana offered, and I made a pleading noise in my throat. Lapras were so cute. I wanted to hug. Bliss Blissy. I was patted on the head and I relaxed as Blissy comforted me. So that was Breakneck Blitz, right? Lana called out as her Lapras beached itself and Lana climbed down to walk over. Yep. Our first attempt. Arcanine did great. Hi Lana, nice to see you. Well, other than the end. Lana added with a joking grin, and I had a moment of regret as Arcanine started wiggling weakly and howling. You just had to say it. I whispered as Arcanine was too tired to get up either, but her tantrum was pretty obvious. Calm down Arcanine. You did great for a first time. Oops. Lana said, but she was still laughing and walked closer. Ah, I knew that look. If you rub her belly, she'll probably relax. I told Lana, and the girl took my offer happily, reaching in and stroking Arcanine's soft belly, until the pup stopped struggling and making a lot of noise. Instead I could feel her barrel rise up and not really lower, as she sucked in air and pouted. It's part of the training process, Arcanine. We'll do better next time. I reminded her, and she exhaled, letting go of her pouting. Bliss Blissy Bliss. The tittering laughter of Blissy didn't help either, but Arcanine knew better to complain at Blissy. That way only ended in being crushed beneath a goddess. Soft. Lana whispered as she stroked at Arcanine's fur, and I grinned. That's right. Papa and I did so much work to figure out the right diet to improve an Arcanine's coat. They're a little different from Growlithe, but the work was totally worth it. She's got the shiniest coat. I bragged proudly. I was super proud of all the work I'd done taking care of my Pokemon. It was a long time ago, but I remember that Brock's help in the anime was an important part of Ash's early success. Not just in battles, but taking care of his team. Lapras? The large Lapras leaned into Lana, and I realized that the water Pokemon was feeling jealous. How cute. Right. Sorry. Lana replied, reaching up and stroking the Pokemon's head. I guess I better get going. Sure. I groaned as I just managed to climb into a sitting position. I was regaining feeling in my limbs at least. Hi Lapras. I whispered, and the pretty Pokemon trilled out a greeting happily. Hee hee. If you like Lapras so much, why don't you come with? I'm going fishing. Oh. That sounds fun. I agreed, and managed to regain my feet entirely with a little help from Blissey. Alright Arcanine, let's take a break, and we'll try the Z move again later, okay? I got a grumbled agreement, as Arcanine still hadn't regained her feet. I returned her, and stretched slowly. Then I looked at Blissey. You want to come? Bliss? Blissey. She agreed happily. Turning to Lana, I realized. Yeah, I had to. You mind if I release my Gyarados? Oh. I'd love that. Well. He'll probably scare away the catch though. Lana offered, waving her fishing rod a bit. I slumped a little because that was true. Unless. I grinned, and released my blue heart anyways. He blinked as he looked around, seemingly quite surprised to be released again so soon. That made me a little angry at myself. He shouldn't be surprised at being released. Blue heart. I greeted him cheerfully, and got a rumbling noise in turn as he lay down on the beach to be close to me. We're going fishing, but I wanted to know if you wanted to do some training. I offered, and he blinked at me, but didn't really respond. Blue Heart wasn't really interested in training like Arcanine was. He simply was happy to be around me. I nodded at his lack of reaction. That was fine. We're going to do some flying practice, okay? I want you to try and fly without using Dragon Dance. We're going to swim out on the Lapras, and you just need to circle around us slowly, and try to keep yourself out of the water, okay? I asked him, and he click-clacked a response. Whoa. Lana gasped, suddenly appearing right beside me. What was that? That noise he made? Oh, Blue Heart doesn't really talk. I'm not sure if it's his thing, or something most Gyarados don't do. But he still makes some noises. It's like humming an agreement or grunting a denial instead of saying yes or no. Ee. It's so cute. Lana whispered, and I could see she wanted to get close, so I walked over and started rubbing Blue Heart's cheeks, and nodded for Lana to join me. We got a lot of looks, I noted, from the beachgoers, as two girls laughed and giggled at a Gyarados as they played with him, mostly mushing his face around. Walked over to the Lapras. Lapras was already sliding back into the water off the beach, and Blissey did a little hop and basically floated over, landing on the Pokemon's back and taking a seat. I climbed up after her, scrambling to get onto the Lapras shell as she started swimming out into the ocean, and Blue Heart followed with a light roar. I laughed as he followed, swimming after the Lapras that I noticed was swimming a bit fast, with Blue Heart chasing after her. Okay, Blue Heart. Now. Fly atop the water. I called out, and his big eyes narrowed as he shifted, and slowly rose out of the water just a tiny bit before flopping back in. We floated out across the waves, and I delighted in how Blue Heart was getting so much attention as he kept trying to float without using Dragon Dance, as he ended up flowing into and out of the waves as he circled us. Are you still going to fish? I asked Lana, and she blinked before smiling. Yep. She pulled out a rod from her large poofy pants, and then to my surprise pulled out a second one and offered it to me. Thanks. I agreed as we both settled down on the back of the Lapras and cast our lines into the water. Lana was really good. I struggled a bit with getting the line to flow out, and I had to think about what I was doing a bit too much, but Lana was just purely on instinct as she tossed the line and then twitched and jerked her rod. Within seconds she got a bite. I watched her fight her catch while I looked at my line where nothing happened. A moment later she pulled, and out came a little Wishawashi. The Pokemon looked at us, as it hung from the line as Lana held it up. We looked at it. It looked around and realized that both a Lapras was looking at it, which had it quivering, and then Gyarados floated past. What? It screeched, long and loud, as it jerked and flipped back into the water, disappearing as fast as it possibly could. Wow. I didn't know they could be that loud. I couldn't help but comment as I pulled my hands away from my ears. Me either. Lana agreed, and then, I couldn't help but break into giggles and Lana soon joined me, the two of us laughing as we reset our lines and flicked them out again. "There you are," Mama called out as I hurried over. "Sorry. I was fishing with Lana, on a lapras," I gushed, and Mama sent me a little smirk as she reached out and pulled me into a side hug. "A lapras, huh? I didn't know you liked them." "Like them? I love them. They're so cool." I argued instantly, and Mama actually smiled at that. "You know Kanto has lapras reservations to try and bring their numbers up. You can probably get permission to visit," Mama said as she guided me towards the table where a bunch of food was already spread out. Papa and Lucario were sitting next to each other already eating, and I was happy to slide into my own chair beside Mama as I joined them. I instantly noticed that Rockruff was under the table begging, his head resting on Papa's knee, squirming a bit to get attention. All I could do was roll my eyes. "Great, another dog begging under the table. What's that about lapras?" Papa asked, and I grinned as I fell into the story about what had just happened. Telling them first about Lana and the lapras fishing trip, and then going backwards to tell about my time at the Pokemon school. "A flying Gyarados, huh? I can't imagine dealing with that back in school," Mama muttered, shuddering a bit instead of arguing. I just leaned over and nudged into her. She nudged me back, so all was right. "So this breakneck blitz, you got Arcanine to use it?" "We're still learning. I think I'll practice it again after dinner. I need to try and stop flopping over afterwards." "Yeah, it would make battling pretty difficult, wouldn't it?" Papa teased, and I huffed at him. "We'll get it." But it was pretty amazing. Arcanine went really fast. Faster than normal, I added, and Papa looked interested. "Well, I'm just glad you had fun with your new friend. You've been running around working, when you should be enjoying your vacation," Mama added, and poked at me, and I realized that she wasn't super happy with all the crazy stuff I've been up to. "Totally worth it though," I told her, smiling happily. "I got Z moves, which are super cool. And Kukui is a cool professor. Plus, I really like Alola," I said, looking away from the table. The entire city was basking in orange sunlight as the setting sun filled everything with amber. People still moved around without showing any signs of stopping. Stores were open and the yummy smell of food filled the air. The visitors like us were all enjoying their time, eating, or watching some of the Alolans put on shows and the like. There was a fire spinning show down at the end of the street where I could just see the green fires of a Marowak working as part of the show. The entire place just felt warm and welcoming. It was nice. "Well, as long as you've enjoyed your time here, it's fine," Papa decided firmly, smiling at me. "Besides, these islanders have good taste. They basically adopted you after all, and anyone that can recognize our Vicky is okay in my book." "Papa," I whined at him, earning a laugh. "It is nice though. I guess that means I can always come back whenever I want. Dragonite should be able to get here pretty dash." "Vicky, no flying Dragonite to Alola," Mama started, and I pouted at her. I was totally going to fly to Alola at some point. She should know that. What if I wanted to get more Z crystals? "She'll do it regardless, dear," Papa added, and then pinned me with a look. "Instead, Vicky knows she'll inform us, and the league, whenever she's going to do any intercontinental travel. That way, if she doesn't arrive where she's going or something happens, the rangers will know where she is going and can try to help her." "Yes, Papa," I agreed, hands raised, and he nodded firmly. "Fine. I guess, if she'll do it anyway," Mama grumbled, sending me a look. "I usually listen." "Usually," she says. "Your daughter gets this from you," Mama said, pointing at Papa, who stiffened up. "My daughter now? I don't remember making her alone. All of this is definitely from you. I was an angel when I was her age," Mama explained, and I snapped to Papa as I heard something I didn't expect. "A fallen angel, maybe," he whispered behind faux coughs. "You got something to say, Ferrous?" Mama demanded, slamming her hands on the table, and Papa narrowed his eyes and leaned in. "Maybe I do, Kobayashi," Papa growled, and both adults suddenly stood up, glaring at each other. "There's a battle area over there, Ferrous," Mama purred out, threat in every syllable. Yeah? You ready for it, Kobayashi? Papa growled, and I noticed Meowth and Rockruff both perking up from their positions nearby. Gag me with a spoon. I whispered, miming doing just that. My parents were flirting. Gross. I watched them both march off, as I kept eating and even released Blissey to join me, as we finished our dinner. Only once I was full did I go check out the battle area and watch as my parents battled it out with new Pokemon. Huh. Papa was actually doing pretty well, but I think Dark-type Meowth synergized with Mama really well. Now sand attack, add some coins into the throw. Mama yelled out, practically cackling as almost literal pocket sand was thrown out along with some coins, which caused Rockruff to flinch back. Cheater. You always do this crap. Rockruff. Howl while you get your eyes clear. We'll power through. Always jump to overwhelming power. This is where your daughter gets it from. Mama mocked, and I huffed a bit, 'cause that was kinda rude. Your daughter destroyed multiple arenas while in the league. Don't think I don't remember when you destroyed the Viridian Gym arena during your journey. She takes that from you. Papa yelled back, pointing. Wait, really? I never heard that story. Yeah, well, your daughter is obviously obsessed with fish and dragons, and that's on you. What? How is that on me? Your family are obsessed with cats, and you're a dog brain. Obviously she got whatever genes it is that makes her pick a weird type of Pokemon from you. Ow? I couldn't help but say, and then I caught it. Mama was smirking. Wait. Are you both roasting me on purpose? I shouted, and I saw both my parents smirking. Oh, that's it. You want to play games? Go, Blissey. I called out, and everyone blinked. It's 2-on-1 now. I don't think you'll like those odds. I told my parents that had gone a little too far. Time to show them the overwhelming power of a goddess. Blissey. My friend greeted, and then her face shifted into a lovely and happy smile that definitely didn't have both of my parents and their new Pokemon shitting themselves in fear. That'd be silly. Blissey is great. Blissey. Go. Did you say something? I asked, looking up from the meal that I was snacking on, and both my parents and their Pokemon shook their head. Rockruff and Meowth were currently curled up in my parents' arms and looking terrified as Blissey happily joined me in snacking. Serves them right for being so mean. The Alolan sun woke me up as it warmed up my face coming in through the hotel window, and I grumbled a bit as I rose up. My room was a bit more full than it had been with just the baby team. Dragonite was snoring on the chair in the corner, that was barely supporting her weight, with Dratini curled up on her belly, which was even cuter because Dragonite was still very pregnant. Milotic was curled up around the room in general, half on the bed with me and half with his wifey. Arcanine had claimed the bathroom tiles and was splayed out snoring happily, her tummy cool. And Blissey was sharing the bed with me, which really meant I was sharing the bed with her, as she had grabbed me in her sleep and I was basically just a plushie to her. It was comfy though. It was really nice to be around my friends and let them have their vacation that they earned. I did already miss my little friends though. Jibble's obsession with water was really getting cute. I sat up and yawned, stretching out. Today I had a meeting with Kukui. We were going to get some more information on the TM thing. I was looking forward to that, but then after? It was probably just practice Z moves. Freeing myself from Blissey took a bit, but I headed into the bathroom, stepping around Arcanine, who huffed at me for waking her to wash my face and brush my hair. I'd taken a shower last night to get the salt water off. Alright. Who wants to practice Z moves? I asked, and instantly Arcanine perked up, her tail whipping around as she very much wanted to practice Z moves. I laughed as I had a whining dog urging me to hurry as I got dressed and either woke up whoever was coming, or let them sleep in. Which really just meant Blissey, Arcanine and I were heading out. And of course blew hard on my hip. We hurried down to the beach and the morning surf was already busy, Alolans and visitors both surfing in the early morning sun. Okay, Arcanine, you remember the moves? I asked her, and got a huff as she practically buzzed with eagerness. Okay. I just gotta figure this part out. I took a breath and started. Arms crossed in front of me. My Z-ring burst into life. Arms out, then back and wrists crossed, both arms to my right side, and then my left going wide, fist into my navel, fist up to my forehead. Breakneck blitz. I called out, but didn't just shove everything into it. That sixth sense of something flowing from me to Arcanine wasn't a reckless surge, but a channel, and I let it flow without letting it overwhelm me. Arcanine lit up as the connection was established, and then she blurred. Once more rocketing away, sending an explosion of sand in her wake as she disappeared into the Z move. That. I looked down at myself. I did feel tired, but I waved my arms up and down a bit. Wiggled my legs. Looked up at Blissey, who had been ready to catch me if I slumped again, and instead got a happy clap as I completed the Z move without just crashing out. I think we did it. I cheered and Blissey cheered with me. I looked towards the path in the sand. Where's Arcanine? Blissey. Yeah. We both broke out into a jog chasing down the beach. Where did that dog go? Chapter 106. What are you doing? I asked a bit breathlessly as we finally found Arcanine. Arc. She whined at me, paws waving in the air. How do you keep ending up on your back? I asked her, and Blissey tittered as we walked over. Blissey and I took a moment to dig and pull her out of the sand until she was on her belly, and of course Arcanine was now completely coated in sand. She was going to need a BATH. I blinked as I realized I didn't even dare say the word in my own mind, or else Arcanine might hear it. Arc, she barked at me, tail wagging, but I noticed she looked a bit tired still. Still too much? I asked her, and she just panted happily. Either too much, or she had just overdone it and kept running for as long as she could. She definitely just kept running. Silly dog. I told her, reaching out and rubbing her cool sandy nose and getting licked in exchange. You able to move, or want to rest? I asked her and got a breathy snort from her nose, puffing up a bit of sand. Return, silly dog. I told her, putting her in her ball, and standing up to check with Blissey, who was still giggling. Quite a team we've got. Bliss. Blissey, Blissey. She agreed. I looked at her, and she tilted her head as I must have had a silly face. Want to try it? I offered. I didn't feel exhausted like before, and I kind of wanted to know how many Z moves I could use. Bliss? She pointed at herself, and then seemed to think it over, tapping just below her lips. Blissey. She agreed, and then as I turned to face her she pointed, and I realized. Yeah, we should get back with everyone first. I don't want to pass out all the way out here. Bliss. She agreed and then offered her fin. I grinned and grabbed it, and we both set off. Blissey giggling as I skipped on the sand, and soon she was joining me, both of us just having fun as we headed back to everyone. The Alolan beaches continued to be an absolute delight, warm sand and sun and cool surf. It was a paradise. But honestly, I liked snow, mountains, and crisp mountain air too. As we headed back across the beach I couldn't help but actually feel a little homesick. Sure, I'd spent a lot of the last year camping out in Kanto up in the mountains or wherever, but I kinda missed Gram and everything. We caught back up to see Papa playing with Rockruff, and Mama still sunbathing with Meowth, the two of them wearing matching looks of relaxation. How cute! We're back. I called out and reached my parents, who looked up. Rockruff snarled, but not in anger. He was playing with a rope. I wasn't going to even ask where Papa had found that. Welcome back. Papa greeted, but he turned back to Rockruff and was happily playing with the puppy. I just rolled my eyes and looked at Blissey. Ready? Bliss. She agreed, pumping her arms. Alright, let's test this out. I confirmed and shifted into the starting pose, which she copied. We ran through it a few times, and I could see my parents were watching on as we synced up. Only when we sort of accidentally activated it a few times did I nod. Okay, Blissey, let's do it for real. Together. Let's show everyone our bond. I called out and started the Normalium Z's moves. The power flowed through me, my hat waving a bit as it burst forth, and flowed into Blissey. Breakneck blitz. I roared out, and Blissey shifted. Instead of pointing down the beach she shifted towards the ocean, and then as the power flowed from me, which I only barely managed to squeeze off before it sucked out everything, she glowed bright, power igniting. And she moved. 1 second she was there, and the next she was sending a trail of sand as she rushed forward. Fast, not quite Arcanine Z powering up extreme speed, but still. Fast. And then she hit the ocean. Literally. Bliss. She cried out and smashed a punch into the first wave that rose up to catch her. Even as my knees went to jello and I slumped into the sand with a groan, just barely keeping myself from going face first. I felt the remains of that wave splatter against me. Blissey punched the ocean. It's super effective. Of course it was only one and done, and well, be say gurgle bliss. I watched as my girl slumped into the ocean. Her Blissey were semi-buoyant. Good to know. She was soon sort of rolling along on the returning waves. Every few moments her head would come up and then she'd keep rolling and dunk her head back into the water again. Papa? I asked weakly. Can you rescue Blissey? I'm on it. He called out, rushing out. Good, 'cause I couldn't help her no matter how much I wanted. My knees had given out and I was laying folded up, staring into the sky. Bliss. Blissey bliss. She grumbled. All I could do was just grunt. That had taken everything out of me. 2Z moves was definitely my limit, at least for now. I bet I could get better at using them, but I was completely fully tapped out. Thankfully Papa was nice and had given me and Blissey a chair and we were hunkering under an umbrella enjoying the cool ocean air that blew over us. Tired. You still going to meet that professor, Kukui? You're going to be late if you don't go now. Papa suddenly reminded me, and I just groaned at him before slowly sitting up. I'm going. I managed to say, and Blissey just flopped a fin at me, not intending at all to follow. You want to stay, or return? Bliss. She denied me and rested back, closing her eyes. Fair enough. You sure, Vicky? You can always tell the professor you can't today. Mama offered, still sitting with Meowth in her lap. Yeah. I want to know what's going on. I'll be okay. Hee hee. I'll just call for a ride. I reached for my belt and hesitated. Normally I would rely on Arcanine, but she was tuckered out, blue heart. I don't think I had the strength to climb up and hold on to him either. Ugh, there was only one choice. Dragon? She asked me as I smiled a little weakly. Is a flight to the Pokemon school okay? Drag. She laughed, laughing with her whole belly shaking. Then she reached down and picked me up like I was a little doll, and flapped her wings. Well, fair enough. That easy, Dragonite. I pointed, and we rocketed off. She looked quite pleased as she flew through the sky. I bet she'd probably been wanting to go for a flight too. Only moments later we arrived, Dragonite landing on the ground, and I stepped away a bit weakly, but I at least was feeling capable of moving around a bit more. You want to return, or stay around? I asked, and she started looking around, poking her head into the Pokemon school curiously. Dragonite. She called out, as if saying excuse me, and I followed her in as she walked through the front hall, looking at all the stuff on the walls. That's the class picture. I added as Dragonite was looking at a line of pictures along the walls. Oh. I blinked at the very feminine voice that spoke up and turned as Dragonite did, sticking my head out from around her bulk, as I looked at who was talking and needed a minute to respond. Oh. What a beautiful Dragonite, hello. Greeted the svelte form of Luzman. As always her hair was almost outrageous, but Luzmany had a definite powerful presence as she stepped up, her heels clicking, just outside of Dragonite's personal space, despite the fact it was obvious she wanted to intrude. Dragonite greeted back with an upraised hand, and Luzman nearly squealed. Oh my, look at you. Hello my. Are you carrying an egg as well? Oh my. She squealed even louder, practically shivering. And look at those scales, and those muscles. You're not just a wild Dragonite at all. Luzman's eyes flashed to me, and she smiled. I couldn't help but smile back. Dragonite does have an egg right now, yes. We're waiting for her to drop it. Oh my. She squealed, and Dragonite chuckled herself as waved off Luzman like it wasn't a big deal. Oh, but Dragonite are so rare. What a wonderful treat. I would love it if you let me examine you. The Ether Foundation has the best medical technology around. Dragonite didn't seem to quite understand and just scratched at the back of her head, and I laughed. I think Dragonite is fairly safe. But thank you for the offer, Mrs. Luzaman. Ah. You already know me. How wonderful, but I don't know you. She asked, giving me a curious look. She was almost acting overly cute, putting her chin in her hand as if examining me a little. I'm Vicky, Victoria Ferrous. I'm helping Professor Kukui with the TM investigation. Oh. Then we're here for the same thing. She reached out and grabbed my hand and shook it up and down, laughing. You simply must tell me how you came to be involved. When I heard about this. Oh my. I was so concerned at first. I'm thankful that this was discovered. Well, I'm sort of responsible for it. I work as a research assistant under Professor Seras in Kanto, but Professor Kukui and I sort of discovered the TM thing. Indeed. Kukui called out, sticking his head out from the same classroom we had used for researching last time. He blinked for a second when he saw Dragonite as well, but she waved, and he smiled in turn. Vicky is our gem for this. Why don't you both come in, and we can explain everything, Director? Haha. Just call me Luzaman, Professor Kukui. You take such good care of my Lily after all. All three of us headed inside, and Principal Oak was already there. Smiling and greeting before stalling out for a second as Dragonite peeked her head in, and then with a bit of wiggling squeezed herself into the room. Looking around curiously. Ah. She's just looking around. Don't mind her. I waved my hands at him, and he blinked, his eyes tracking, and then his face scrunched up. Is she carrying an egg? Luzaman added instantly, and Principal Oak's face shifted to a surprised realization. Well, she did have a lot of time with her hubby recently. It's just sort of what happens. I uttered a little embarrassed, and Dragonite just belly laughed. Hubby? Milotic. They're in love. I added confidently, and Dragonite faux blushed and waved a hand at me. Oh. I want to examine you so much now. Luzaman whined, practically shaking, but she instead sighed and let out the tension. But that's not what I'm here for. Indeed, Director Luzaman. Thank you for joining us, considering how busy you are, but the subject matter has caused some concern. Indeed. Frankly. Technical machines are a fairly new technology. The stress testing for them has been quite broad, but there are still times that something catches us off guard. Luzaman admitted, her previous energy calmed, and the businesswoman showed through. If it wasn't for Vicky, we wouldn't have noticed. The exact same move, with a different presentation, doesn't transfer through TM, so something is causing an issue. Ah. That's what you meant. Well, I can speak for many people, Victoria, thank you. Luzaman offered, even giving a little bow to me. Ah. No problem? So you figured it out already, Luzaman? Indeed. She stepped forward and pulled out what looked like a thumb drive and inserted it into the computer that was set up in the room. Here is the currently used standard TM formatting version. She began, and a whole lot of technical data appeared on the screen. And here is the newly updated version that the Ether Foundation will be sending out shortly to every TM manufacturer across the planet. She offered, and I blinked at how grandiose that sounded. A second file appeared on the screen, and she brought them up next to each other as if comparing them. For me, honestly, other than a few altered lines on graphs and things, I couldn't make heads or tails of the data. Principal Oak seemed the most engaged, as even Kukui looked at it more like a wild Pokemon he would have to tackle than his data he can parse. Can I ask for an explanation in layman's terms? Just so I know what happened. I'm curious. I asked, raising my hand like I was in school, and Luzaman blinked at my request before laughing, her previous controlled personality flowing away as she snapped and pointed at me. Indeed. Very well, let's see. TMs currently add a psychic addition into Pokemon's minds. A sort of blueprint on how to use a move. The memory of it if you want to get involved in the psychic transference, but cleaned out of personality. It lets a Pokemon know how to shift their energy to use a move. Yes, Anne. I see. Principal Oak offered with a sigh. The technology. It's too powerful. Indeed. The copied memory is applied using the same techniques that have been in use since the first technical machine. Despite the refining of the copying and clarity of the memories, the application system, the TM application device, is still the same. Luzman had taken a sort of teaching pose, waving a finger around as she held on to the elbow of her arm. It's too strong. Kukui offered instantly, and that clicked in my mind. Wait. The old TMs would have been low quality, low clarity as you said. So since the new copies are much higher clarity, it's putting in too much power transferring the memories. Burning them in. I whispered the last part, realizing how terrible that sounded. Bing bing. She agreed, and Kukui spoke up. What's the damage? We've already confirmed they can't alter the move. Please tell me, Luzman, you've already determined this? Kukui asked. Of course. We've been working non-stop since this was brought to my attention. Relax. There is some damage, but nothing irreversible. In fact, it's opened up a new function we've never considered before. A move. Deleter. She offered, waving her hand like she was leading an orchestra. It works? I cut in as well, knowing that everyone had questions, but I had some too. Because I gave some of my Pokemon TMs before, does it remove the damage? It does. She confirmed, and it was like the tension on my shoulders disappeared. We confirmed it ourselves. It also could explain a recurring issue that was considered bad training up until now. The reason why Pokemon learning from TMs seemed to operate at a lower level than normally trained Pokemon. You think it's related? No proof yet, but I've already started a research group on it. Give us a month or more, and we should be able to confirm it. Especially since the new technical machine version should remove the move lock? She hummed like trying to figure out the right word. That's a relief. Kukui said, smiling in relief. Luzman, you're a lifesaver. Huh. Protecting Pokemon is part of the Ether Foundation charter. This is something that we are culpable in. Bad research and improper testing. No one considered lowering the upload frequency strength once the clarity of the brainwave copy was created. Thinking on what was being said, I reached into my bag and rummaged around until I pulled it out. My own TM uploader. It was just a device you attached to a Pokeball and then put the TM on the little wheel and it would upload to the Pokemon. So what do I need to fix my uploader? I asked the group, and all the adults blinked. Oh, it'll need to be replaced entirely, won't it? Principal Oak asked, before seemingly realizing what he had just said. Uploaders weren't super expensive, the real cost was the TMs themselves, but from what I understood they were pricey, but the companies sold them planning on more TM sales to offset the loss. If they all would need to be replaced? That could change. Probably a full replacement. Luzman added, but she was tapping her lips. You can't just patch the program. Make it use less power when uploading? I asked, and the woman continued to tap at her lips as she considered it. Patch? Maybe the Ether Foundation can earn even more goodwill out of this. She decided. I believe it is possible we could create some sort of patch, as you say, but trying to update so many devices? How many people will just ignore the update? Why not ask Nurse Joy for help? I spoke. If there is something hurting Pokemon, then obviously Nurse Joy would want to fix it. You could just send whatever device you need to update the uploaders to Nurse Joy and have them offer it to trainers passing through. Maybe the move deleter as well? Integrated into Pokemon centers? They already have the video phones. Oh. Luzman cooed and then burst into laughter, before I was suddenly lifted right off my feet. Oh, aren't you the smart one? What a good girl. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I was held tightly, and my hair on top of my head was rubbed into a complete mess. Luzman was strong. Yay. I cried out as I wiggled a bit, but I was soon placed back on my feet, almost woozy from the sudden attack. I like it. I'll reach out to the Joys, and we can figure out at least sending the device that can update the uploaders to every Pokemon Center. Oh. Maybe even reach out about how to find the move lock itself. If a Nurse Joy discovers it, they could help remove it right there. It would certainly speed things along. That's really smart. I said, I only mentioned the move deleter in Pokemon centers, because that's where you could find them in some versions of the game. Oh, aren't you adorable? She once more reached out and cupped both my cheeks. Ah. You should be good friends with my children. I bet Gladion and you would get along so great. Ah, and you'd be so cute Toj dash asterisk cough asterisk never mind. But Vicky-chan. You simply have to come visit the Ether Foundation. You're such a smart one, I want to scoop you right up. Ah. Thank you? And what do you mean together? And scoop you dash. Alright. I do have to run. She interrupted me. But I'm very glad I was able to make time for this meeting. Principal Oak, Professor Kukui, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I hope the Ether Foundation's efforts have impressed? Very much so, Luzaman. Thank you. Kukui offered with a grin, and the woman smiled brightly as she started walking but stopped for a second to grab Dragonite's hand, as she'd just been watching the whole time and cooing over her for a minute before continuing to walk out. Did Luzaman just say she was trying to set me up with her son? I asked, after a minute, and Kukui and Oak both did a spit take and pointedly changed the subject immediately after. Was I in danger? It took a bit for all three of us to settle down once Hurricane Luzaman had left. The men had done everything they could to avoid my question, which was fine. Dragonite was giggling at me, and I huffed at her, which only made her giggle harder. Was Luzaman serious about that? Gladion was. Well, an idiot. I shook it off as the two men had returned to looking over the data, and I followed along as best I could as Principal Oak looked over what Luzaman had left for us. Do you mind if I take a copy of this and send it to Professor Seras? I think Luzaman might beat me to sending it out if what she said is true, but dash. Absolutely. That's not an issue. Here. Take the original, I already copied it over. Principal Oak offered, and I grinned as he handed me the thumb drive-like device. Cool. I'd never seen something just like it. I wonder if it was something the Ether Foundation made. I put it in my backpack for later. So. That was fun. I mean, it was scary, but fun as well. Discovering something new, and then getting it fixed and everything. Huh. That's what being a professor is all about. Kukui offered, puffing up with his hands on his hips. Why, there is no more important job in the whole world. If you say so, Professor. I managed to say from in between my giggles. Still, I'm glad that the Ether Foundation was able to figure out what was wrong so fast and fix it. I believe the actual knowledge was already known. Move lock, as Luzaman called it, isn't exactly new. Principal Oak offered. I have no doubt Luzaman has nothing but good intentions, mind you. He added as everyone looked at him. But there are people who wouldn't care and would hide that sort of thing just because it's inconvenient to fix. I'm glad that we were able to bring Luzaman into this so quickly. Jerks. I decided, and Principal Oak's face softened into an amused smile. People can be, but when we all work together, we can overcome that sort of thing. Yep. I agreed without a thought. Bonds were bonds, and bonds were power. I turned as Dragonite purred out a question, but she wasn't looking at me. She was patting her belly a bit. Then she looked up and I felt my eyes widen. It's coming? Dragonite. She confirmed, and I instantly started fumbling with my belt. I needed a ride. No, an ambulance. Emergency. I calmed after a second of panic, took a breath. Okay, return Dragonite, I'll get you to the Pokemon Center. Dragon. She giggled, seemingly noticing my panic as she walked over with a bit more hobble to her step than before and patted me on the head. I love you too. I told her, and she tittered. I quickly returned her and rushed out of the building. Sorry, Arcanine. Even if you're a little tired, it's an emergency. I cooed a bit as I held the incubator in my lap, gently cleaning it off with a wet cloth. Dragonite was resting on the beach with Milotic wrapped around her. She was content, and Dratini was around my shoulder staring at the egg. looking left and right as if hoping it would hatch even faster. Do you think it'll be a little brother, or a little sister? I asked him, and his fins flared for a second as if he hadn't even realized it could be one or the other. I laughed. My little family had gotten one egg larger. Chapter 107. New egg. I cheered to Mama and Papa as I caught up to them. They'd been out getting lunch or something, but when they came back to our little spot on the beach, I'd stood up and showed off the incubator I'd been cradling. Oh my! Mama cooed as she hurried over and checked it out. The Alolan meowth looking up disinterested as he rested sprawled across Mama's shoulders. Mama looked over at Dragonite, who was still looking rather proud of herself as she continued to be cradled by her hubby. Congratulations, she told my big dragon Mama, and Dragonite giggled happily at the words. That's amazing. There won't be any issues with it, will there? It was laid here in Alola after all. Nah, I'm sure it'll be fine, I said firmly. Was it possible there could be some trouble? Maybe, would there be? Nah. The Alolan people were great, and Kahuna Hala was good people. We had a thing. Besides, I grinned. I wanted to challenge him again sometime. Let's see how his fighting types fare against a bit stronger Pokemon. Oh. I could ask Lucario if she wanted to fight. I looked at Lucario and she must have felt something. She tittered but shook her head, instead tugging on Papa's sleeve. Lucario Lou. Huh? A battle? He asked, and I realized that those two dog brains were totally synced up. Papa instantly understood Lucario. That's cheating, Papa. I grumbled at him, pouting, and he looked at me guilelessly, not knowing at all why I was upset. Lolialu. Lucario tittered and I glared at her too. She just stepped over and patted me on the head like a child. What's going on? I was thinking that I should challenge Hala again sometime soon. And I was wondering if Lucario wanted to battle with me, but she wanted to battle with you. Well. Sorry Vicky. It's okay. I'm sure your team will be happy to battle. Yeah. I guess. I huffed, but shook it off. But we're celebrating Dragonite's new egg. Dratini is going to have a little sibling. Teeny. He shouted, almost like a roar to the sky from around his mother's neck that he'd been wrapped around like a scarf. It was actually surprisingly draconic and everyone laughed at how cute it sounded. That's right, I said firmly. He'd grow. And someday he'd be an unstoppable dragon, also he could protect his little sibling. Siblings. Anyway, I don't really want to head into the water with the egg. So do you want to see what else Alola offers instead of the beach? I asked my parents, and both of them looked at each other and then smiled. That sounds lovely, Vicky. How about we go see the island tours? They have some ride Pokemon that'll take you all over. Sounds fun. I agreed and we all got up. I looked at the dragon family, but they were happy, and I nodded as Milotic sent me a look. They'd be comfy here. Since this was a tourist town, it didn't take long to get everything sorted. A nice Alolan man had set us all up, but we'd all ended up picking a different Pokemon. I'd gone with Tauros cause the little guy had mooed at me as I walked past, and that was good enough for me. Mama had grabbed a Mudsdale and looked quite pleased as she slipped into the saddle of the equestrian Pokemon. It looked like she'd done it before, in fact. Papa of course chose the Stoutland, the massive dog easily carrying Papa around, and within moments the two had bonded. Lucario even climbed on behind Papa, and Rockruff was still trailed after happily trotting along with the larger dog. Papa had made a little pack. Meowth of course had climbed up onto the rump of Mudsdale, and laid down to nap, and looked quite content. I just had my incubator that I was holding tight as we started along. Haha. And this is the Bamboo Hill. It's a reserve, kept mostly untouched except for the road. Lots of Pokemon make their home in the forest. Oh. I cooed as I saw a bunch of Grubben hanging out on the long bamboo poles. The little bug types happily chewing on what leaves they could find, or on the bamboo itself. Neat. Bugsy would be in heaven right now. We continued on, walking along pretty streams, and across a long bridge way over the stream below. And then we arrived at a very high location on the mountain, and the guide had timed it just right, as the sun was setting and bathed the whole place in red and orange light, as the ocean glittered and it had a very pretty aesthetic. We all stayed there for a while as the sun finally set, before heading back, enjoying the moonlight stroll through Mele Mele Island. As we were traveling back, the dogs caught it first, Stoutland's ears twitching as he jerked his head upright alongside Rockruff, and that got everyone's attention including the guide. Seems like there might be a battle ahead. We can go another way, or check it out. He asked us, and I perked up. Let's go see, I said eagerly, looking to Mama and Papa, who both nodded, with me. Even if Mama didn't look super eager. The four of us continued on. The guide looked just as interested in what was going on as I was. It didn't take long, a bend in the road and right in an open spot between the forests was a battle. It only took a moment to realize what was going on. Oh no. Not them again. The guide moaned, and then called out. Hey! You lot! Get out of here! He roared, urging his own Tauros onwards. 2 members of Team Skull were fighting with a truly massive Raticate. Whoa! Is that in dash? I was about to say Alpha, but the guide called out. Leave the totem Pokemon alone. He yelled while urging his Tauros on. His charge sent the Team Skull members returning their Pokemon, a Machop and a Mankey, and the 2 boys cursed the guide. Forget you then. Loser. Bleeg. They cried insults as they took off, and I frowned taking in the image. The dark Raticate was really big, and he had a horde of little Rattata along with him, but my eyes hadn't shifted from the totem Pokemon, partially because totem, and partially because I kinda wanted to hug him, but as I stared, it turned and picked up. Was that a package of some sort? It looked like it, and stuffed it back in its mouth before taking off. Hold this. I called out, as I jumped off Tauros, and pushed my incubator into Mama's hands. In a flash, Arcanine was out in a burst of lighter as she looked around, not sure what was going on as I leapt onto her back. After that, Raticate. I called out, and that was all she needed to hear. Wait. That's a totem Pokemon. You aren't supposed to dash. I ignored the guide. I'd deal with any problems after, but I can put 1 and 1 together. Arcanine didn't even take a few moments to leap through the forests, even without a saddle, and so I needed to cling on, slowing her down. She still raced ahead of the quick darting rats. We leapt out in front of the totem, stopping it cold as Arcanine growled. Drop that package. I demanded, finger pointing at the totem. Just hissed. I noticed its cheek shifting, no doubt thinking of the package it currently had, and then the Rattata started hissing as they clambered all around the forest around us. I scoffed as I slipped off Arcanine, and took a few confident steps to the side, uncaring that I was surrounded by angry dark types, or a massive totem Pokemon. My hand reached up to adjust my hat, and I felt my chin rise as I looked down my nose at the totem. Then it's a battle, I proclaimed, and the totem nodded, reaching in and pulling out a package. It looked like a parcel, something Amazon might ship to you. It was set aside, and the Pokemon charged. Without even a moment's hesitation, the Rattata moved in sync. Arcanine. Go. I roared, and there was a static blur touching my ear, as suddenly Arcanine was gone, and the cries of injured Pokemon sounded out. I kept my eyes locked onto the Raticate, who was eyeing me up just as seriously as Arcanine reaped the Rattata. Flame up. I called out, and the extreme speed shifted into an extreme flame wheel, just a spiral of flame that shot around the forest, and every Pokemon it touched was knocked out. Then Arcanine was behind me. Still aflame, as there was just the Raticate. Kate. Raticate. It hissed, and suddenly its fong glowed, brighter and brighter. Hyper Fong. It moved, incredibly fast, bouncing forward into a spin and charging. Right at me? Heh. Protect. I called, and suddenly as that Fong drew just inches from me, it was stopped cold on a solid wall of energy. Arcanine. I told her, and I raised my wrist. Z crystal glowing. You want to target me? Then take my revenge. I told the dark type. Cross the arms in front of me. Throw them out. Then back in, crossing my wrists, shift my arms to the side. Then, as I felt that link between us grow, left arm with a fist to my navel, and the other fist to my forehead. We were linked. My energy flowed, but I stifled that overwhelming urge to let it all. Hala had told me I was doing it wrong, and Kukui had given me some tips. Arcanine didn't need all that energy. No, wait. The more energy I put in, the more she tried to match it. That's why we were both exhausted after. Stifle the flow, keep it light. We needed enough to do the move, not everything. Now. Arcanine. Breakneck Blitz. I roared, my spirit jumped into Arcanine, and then there was the sound of a high-pitched whine, like a jet engine starting up, and then a sonic boom. I kept my feet and only kept myself from flinching too bad by dropping my hat over my eyes to keep the dust from messing with my vision. But when I pulled up my hat, there was a streak through the jungle, a trail that led from where Arcanine had been standing to where the Raticate was, and then through. Broken trees and torn up grass was the only sign of where my Pokémon had disappeared to. The Rattata that were still awake that had hung back scurried away, not one of them sticking around, and I grinned evilly as I walked over and picked up the brown package and held it in my arms as I went to check on where my dog had ended up. I didn't have to travel far before I heard the howl of victory and grinned as I jogged, breaking through some bushes to find Arcanine standing up and howling happily, as the totem Raticate lay unconscious smashed into a tree that had buckled at the force placed on it. I think you got him, girl, I said, walking up and patting her flank, which was a mistake as a moment later I was spitting out fur as her tail attacked me. Ack. No more tail whip. It's super effective. Arc. Arc. She barked at me, spinning around, and suddenly I was being attacked by her inescapable tongue. Ack. What are you, a lickitung? When did you learn lick, huh? I batted her away with one hand, fending off her assault. And then I nearly stilled as I realized I sounded like Professor Kukui. Arat. The totem Pokemon groaned and I looked around her, as Arcanine whipped her head towards the Pokemon as well. It was still conscious? Ah, I see. It swallowed a berry it must have held in its cheek pouch. Probably why it removed the package so it didn't just eat that instead on accident. You want to go for another round? I asked, loudly enough to make sure the Raticate could hear me, and it looked up, puffed itself up a bit before it deflated and just flopped back to the ground. Nope. Good. I told it as I petted Arcanine. Although I could feel the tension in her frame, she wanted to go again. Obviously. The Raticate looked at me, and huffed, suddenly shifting something in its mouth before spitting out. AZ Crystal. Is that for me? I asked, a little shocked at the sight of the Darkinium Z. Raticate. It grumbled, and I actually felt a bit sorry for it then. Not that I was going to forgive the whole attempt to attack me thing. I walked over and picked up the Z crystal, and looked it right in the eye as I did. You want to try and sucker punch me or something? Go ahead. You won't like the consequences. I mentally conveyed to the beaten up Pokemon, and it responded by looking away first. There you are. The guide. I turned to see him come stampeding through the forest through the broken path Arcanine had made. Mama and Papa came in behind him, although they looked less worried than he did. Ah. Look what you've done. He sort of shrieked. Well, he did sort of attack me first. I whispered, quietly enough Mama and Papa couldn't hear. You cannot just battle totem Pokemon. This is. He looked a little stressed, but Mama and Papa were just looking proud as they looked at how much damage Arcanine had done. Arcanine, I noticed, even trotted over to Papa as the guide was sort of pacing, trying to figure out what to do, and he pet her quietly, telling her she was a good dog. Rockruff was puffing at the attention she was getting and started bouncing up along the side of Stoutland, who was just looking back at the other dogs like he was embarrassed for them. Total old dog energy. I just shrugged in the end. The guide could figure it out. Arcanine. I called, and she turned away from Papa only with much whining. Swinging her face from him and her desire for his attention and me a few times before she slumped and walked over. So I of course grabbed her nose and shook her snout. Don't look at me like I don't give you attention, you little brat. I growled at her, and that got her tail going as she licked and fought against my hand. Once that was done, I slipped onto her back. All right, back to the road. I'll be back. Wait. Guest. You cannot leave. We need dash. The guide was left in the dust as we bounded just a few times to return to the road. Do you smell them, girl? The teenagers that were here. They had a Mankey and a Mackhop. I told her, and Arcanine's nose started wiggling before she picked up and raced along the road. Honestly, it wasn't a surprise that it only took a few moments before I caught up to them, a pair of grumpy teenagers slumped along as they walked along the road kicking rocks. Hey! I called out as Arcanine stopped beside them and they both brought up fists like they were going to fight. What? Whoa. What do you want? You coming for a fight? The lead one challenged from behind his mask and hat. No? Is this yours? I asked, pulling up the package and offering it. The boy's eyes widened. Hey! That's Millie's gift. What? He reached out instantly and took it back, seemingly checking the slightly damp package, before just tearing it open. Inside was a Poke doll of all things, a really cute Lapras plush. When those rats stole it, I was worried they'd tear it apart. The damn things always steal packages thinking it's food. Thanks kid, I'm Keanu. No problem, I'm Vicky. Hee hee. Sorry about the guide guy. When I noticed the totem Raticate had a package, I realized you guys were trying to get it back. TSK. As if the old timers like that care. They just like to blame everything on us, just because we don't do what they like. Yeah, at least we don't have to take this to Guzma. He's got enough on his plate. The other one said and the first one nodded. True. But yeah. Thanks. Appreciate the help. Keanu offered a bit uncomfortable. No problem, no problem. I'm going to get back. Smell ya later. I called out laughing at my words as I turned Arcanine around. Now to deal with the guide and whatever was going to happen. By the time I made it back, the guide was on a radio of all things, and yep, he was calling the cops. I rode Arcanine back to my parents who looked irritated at the guide's actions, and I could tell some sort of argument had gone on between the adults. Back. I called out, and the guide looked up. Yes, she just returned. Yes, we will stay here. The totem is injured, but not badly. Yes. Yes. I looked away from him and smiled at Papa, who was giving me a look. Took care of everything? Yep. The package was a Poke doll. Not sure why the Raticate wanted it so bad. I told him, but I noticed what I said was ignored, or not heard by the guide. I looked around and saw my ride Tauros standing beside the guide as well. Well, I don't think I was taking the Tauros back to town after this. I patted the back of Arcanine's head. It honestly didn't take long before we heard the sound of a siren, and Officer Jenny, in that same tactical officer's uniform, came walking into the forest, noticing all of us and nodding. Okay. Everyone, I'm here. Please remain calm while I complete my investigation. She called out and looked around, noticing Mama and Papa and then at me. I waved at her. And her face fell. Is she the one this is all about? Officer Jenny asked, pointing at me, and the guide nodded. Yes. She ran off and battled the totem. Look at him. He pointed at Raticate that was attempting to look way more injured than it was. It was even faking an injured paw as it sort of stumbled as it moved. Well, a totem battle isn't unusual for a trial. Officer Jenny replied, and the guide looked offended. She's a tourist. Actually, she's an official Alolan. This is Victoria Ferrous. Kahuna Hala made the announcement. Remember? Of course I remember, but the man trailed off looking a little lost. It did give me the Darkinium Z after our battle. I called out, pulling it out of my pocket to show it off. There. See? There is no issue here. Except the totem Raticate needing a ride to a Pokemon Center. Jenny offered, and the totem perked up at that. I can help with that. I decided. Releasing Blissey, who looked around and saw the injured Raticate, and then advanced on him instantly, the poor rat yelped as Blissey leaped to start helping him. If he thought I was going to let him have a free visit at the Pokemon Center where no doubt Nurse Jenny would give him treats and tell him he was a good boy, that wasn't happening. Blissey would take care of him and send him on his way. Well, him and his horde of Rattata. Heel pulse shot out and I nodded. Then I guess. That's it? The guide offered and Officer Jenny sent him a look. Indeed. Now I believe you have a tour to finish? I'll be on my way. Miss Ferrous. She waved at me, and I smiled. By Officer Jenny. Drive safe. Well, the look Mama and Papa were giving the guide, and his own look back meant this was going to get awkward. Oh well. I got a new Z crystal, so that was cool, and I returned a poke doll to the Team Skull guys. Geez, Alola, despite being so peaceful and nice, sure was a bit of a mess under the surface, huh? I guess that's how all places truly were after all. Tourists were only shown the shiny lie, but underneath you saw the truth, and while it was still beautiful, it wasn't always shiny. I nodded along at my own understanding as we all headed off once Blissey finished healing the mischief of rats. That night with the moon up, and my belly full of dinner we'd all had, Mama and Papa and I had split off. I was going out to camp on the beach. Milotic, Dragonite, and Dratini were still out there, enjoying the warm evening air and warmer sands as I met up with them. Honestly, I just cuddled up with the incubator after making sure everyone had eaten. It was a peaceful night, and I loved being cuddled up with my friends. The glint of another Z crystal in my hand. Another crystal, another Z move. I honestly wasn't sure if I even needed any more. Dragonium and Normalium were already so useful. Maybe a Waterium Z for Milotic and Furium Z for Arcanine? Since I was here, I should probably try and get a few more for versatility, even if I only plan to use a few Z crystals and Z moves. They were amazing. An incredibly powerful boost, something that might just let me push through the Elite Four, that might let me beat Lance. Heh. Either way, win or lose, no one would expect them. I looked at my friends. Dratini was happily chattering away, hanging from Milotic's head, dangling back and forth like a pendulum in front of his mother, who was giggling at his antics. He looked at me, and I broke into giggles just as easily as he was sticking his tongue out as he was waving back and forth, and it just looked super silly. I pocketed the Darkinium Z for now, enough thoughts on that. Instead. So I figured out how to use the Z move without making either of us pass out. So who wants to train with Z moves? I asked my little family, and all three of them perked up, making me laugh as I was instantly crooned at by all three as they all wanted it. Hee hee hee. Chapter 108. Woomph. I once more tasted sand. It was bad. Bleg. I was rolled over by a giggling Melodic, and I saw Dratini beside me in the dirt. The echoing sound of his devastating drake sounding on the waves. Pfft, I spit sand and then muttered weakly. That was too much. Teeny. He offered cheerfully, and I smiled as he leaned in and gave me little Dratini kisses, as he started curling around my head. I'm glad you liked it. I whispered to him, feeling warmed by more than just the sands. I'd hit my limit. Having Dragonite, and then Dratini use a Z move back to back had been too much, and I'd once more been drained. Now the question was, how long did it take me to recover? Could I use that? Could I plan around using the Z move, and restoring myself enough to use it again? There was some fun training that I'd need to do, and of course my dragons were buzzing after releasing so much power. Dragonite and Dratini might be very chill dragons, but feeling that power flowing through them made them want it more for sure. Sorry. I'm all tuckered out. I whispered, and Dragonite giggled at me. Even as Dratini just nuzzled me a bit, saying it was okay. It was pretty comfy. Should I just sleep out here on the beach? I felt my eyes close. Yep. Sounds good. Come on out, everyone. I whispered, and felt my pokeballs rumble as they released. And soon I was nice and cuddly, blue heart wrapped around us all, with everyone clumped into a ball in the center between him and Milotic. Hee hee. I slept. The next morning I was woken up by someone poking me, and then I heard it. Vicky! Wake up. I blinked the sand from my eyes and groaned. I'm awake. I called out, noticing it was Blissey who had been poking me, and then I had to crawl on top of Blue Heart as he was still snoozing quite happily to see Papa standing on the sand. Really, Vicky? I was worried when we didn't see you in your hotel room. Papa called out, and I noticed much farther back was Mama. All right. Garrido scared her still. Sorry. I was seeing how many Z moves I could use in a row before being out and decided to just nap on the beach. I called out, and I felt Blue Heart slowly waking up, his head shifting a bit to look towards me as his eyes blinked sleepily. Half his face was covered in sand. Pfft. Hee hee hee. I giggled as I crawled up his body until I was next to his face and I wiped the sand free of his cheek. He must have been drooling or something to have such a funny line of sand. Sleep well? I asked him. He blinked and he gave a sort of gurgling noise that I took as a yawn. Yeah, you slept well, I said happily as I patted his cheek. But I need to get up and get everyone some food, I said looking at Papa, who was chuckling at my avoidance of the word. Last thing I wanted was an Arcanine absolutely sure it was time to eat right at that exact moment. She was usually annoying during the cooking process, but if I wasn't even cooking yet, she was impossible. With that I stretched and got to work. Since everyone had stayed out of their pokeball, they'd all be nice and hungry, so I went to work. Setting up a camp and getting a little fire going on the sand. Papa came back with a bunch of extras I could throw in that he picked up from a market, and soon I had all my team chowing down on a yummy and delicious and most importantly, nutritionally filling breakfast. Now of course it was time to figure out what to do today, and I had an idea. Riding Garridos over to Kahuna Hala's home, I settled outside his little residence, making sure not to get too close to his little car. Didn't want Blue Heart to squish it after all. By the time I stepped off, and patted Blue Heart's nose in thanks for the ride, and returned him, Hala was stepping out, along with another boy, about my age, or maybe a bit younger. Ah. That was how. Alola. I called out waving and got a nod from the Kahuna, and a big wave from How. Alola. How are you, young Victoria? I'm good. I had a great night on the beach, I told Hala as I jogged up grinning, and then I hefted up my incubator, no doubt something he'd already seen. I wanted to talk to you. Dragonite laid an egg yesterday and I dash. Ah, I see. I see. Come inside. He offered, chuckling, and Hal's eyes were wide as he looked at the egg. A Pokemon egg, he whispered, and I grinned at him. Isn't it cute? It's gonna be a cute little Dratini. Wha? Really? Yep. I told the boy, and I could see the look in his eye. Heh, you want a Dratini? I asked him, and he flinched a bit and hesitated. Well, I just want to be a strong trainer. And dragons are supposed to be strong. They can be. But the thing with dragons is they almost always start very weak, I explained with a waving finger. Huh? Really? Uh-huh. Most Pokemon can bully a Dratini. Or a Jangmo-o. Or any of the first evolutions of the big dragons. Dragons just understand what it means to be weak, better than most other Pokemon. It's why they seek strength all the more because of it. I feel like that, he whispered as we walked into the entrance of Hala's home. I lose every test battle I take part in. Everyone always defeats me. Then, you know what it means to be weak, but the thing is? Being weak is only ever temporary. Train. Learn, grow strong. And use that feeling of being weak in your chest to push you to grow strong. Ah, but never forget what it felt like. Because you don't want to be a bully. Remember. Just because someone is weak now, doesn't mean they'll always be. Pokemon are the best at teaching that lesson. If How is too weak, then train until you evolve into who you are meant to be. Ho ho ho. Such life lessons this early? Hala called out, chuckling, and I whipped over to him before realizing how preachy I was being. Ah. Sorry. I rubbed at the back of my head. I ramble sometimes. No, those were good words. Now it's up to my grandson to see if he can take them for his own, or if they aren't the right words for him. Ah. I'll do my best. How offered, and I grinned. So your Dragonite laid an egg? What a wonderful day. Congratulations. Hala offered as he guided me to sit across from him at a little kitchen table, mostly cleared of breakfast. Thank you. I was so happy. Dratini is going to get a little sibling. I kinda hope it's a little girl, but a little brother for him would be good too. I happily chattered as I rubbed a hand along the incubator. Ho ho ho. Either is good, yes. You came to me with this, you worry there might be trouble? Uh-huh. I don't think there would be, but Mama and Papa mentioned it. There will not be. While of course any egg caught here in Alola would have to stay, we don't steal eggs from our guests' Pokemon. On top of that, you are of Alola. Even if you caught it here, it would be yours to care for and raise into a fine Pokemon. Kahuna. Thank you. I muttered, a bit flattered at how easily he had said that. Ha ha ha. It is nothing. You have done well. I heard you fought another totem Pokemon? Oh, the Raticate. Yeah, he stole a package, and some teenagers were trying to get it back. Arcanine and I used Breakneck Blitz and blasted him. He gave me this. I pulled out the Darkinium Z from my pocket. Whoa. How called out, looking with stars in his eyes at the Z crystal. Then your trial continues well. I suppose so. I said, smiling brighter at the acceptance. I did have another reason for coming, Kahuna. Oh? I would like a rematch. I decided, locking our eyes together. I figured out how to use a Z move without passing out. So, I would like to face you at your strongest. Ha 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 ha. Hala burst into laughter, his belly shaking, and Hal looked at me like I was insane, and also like that was awesome. I see. You wish to pit your strong Pokemon against my own? Yes. I refuse. He said, absolutely enjoying the near pratfall I gave a moment. Nearly smashing my face into his table at the sudden rejection, I rose back up. Well, why? What? Grandpa. Ha 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 ha. Calm yourself, calm. He demanded, still absolutely enjoying the drama he'd just unleashed. While I would enjoy a great battle with you, League Victor Victoria, I have no doubt that you would defeat me. But truthfully, I believe there is a better battle we must complete. A true rematch. Your Riolu. She deserves to try again, don't you think? I instantly felt my face puff up. Does she? I grumbled, and Hala broke into even more laughter at my response. Fine. I guess that's fair. I probably should send my main team home soon, and bring back my little dragons. They need more attention. And Jibble really does love the ocean. I muttered, even as my heart clenched at sending my friends home. Then I accept. Come back with your Riolu. I wish to see how you fare with a completed Z move. And perhaps a bit more work on your bond first? You aren't leaving anytime soon, correct? Well, no, we're still staying for a while longer. Hee hee. I guess I'll see you another day then, Kahuna. Just choose a day. I'd be happy to have another battle with you, young Victoria. I nodded firmly at his words and stood up. Then I'll be off. Thank you for seeing me. Anytime. He assured me with a smile, and I marched back out. Now, I had to figure out what team I wanted with me. I slumped. Having to pick is so hard. I was flopped out on the beach, sitting with Dratini in my lap as I looked over everyone. So, I'm probably going to switch some of you out for the baby team again. They still need the training, and I can trust you all to teach everyone about the Z moves while I'm here. I explained, but then I sniffled, but I totally wasn't crying or anything. Growling, Blue Heart rumbled, leaning in and licking at me a little, making me squeal and bat his tongue away. Ack. Stinky breath. Bliss. Blissy bliss. I was then patted on the head as Blissy walked over and spoke. I looked up at her and smiled. Thanks, Blissy. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry your Alolan vacation was so short, but this won't be the last time you're here. I promise. I'll let everyone come back. Arc. I was barked at by Arcanine, who was laying on her belly in the sand, but she wasn't agreeing with me, but making fun of me. Hey. You're the crybaby. I pointed, and Arcanine doggy grinned at me as I wiped away my eyes. Stupid dog. I leapt at her and slammed into her smug grin, sending us both tumbling in the sand as she just kept rolling around as I was wrapped around her, and that hurt. Sky, sand, bleg. I just let go and she rose and shook herself off and looked at me smugly. You meanie. I grumbled at her, and she walked over and just licked me, which I allowed as I rubbed at her fur. Silly dog. Me, I turned and Milotic was there and rubbing against me, and I sank into him as our cheeks pressed together. Is it okay? Me, Milo. He nuzzled me. I know. I just don't like it. I huffed and then hugged my silly fish boy. He accepted my grip on his head and let me hold on as he rose up and brought me back to the group. You okay there, Trouble? Papa called out, and I looked up from Milotic and even sighed as I let go, dropping the short distance back to the sand and waving at him. Fine. You don't sound fine. I'm trading back my team to Kanto. The baby teen needs more attention and Alola is perfect for them. A good place for all of them to develop a bit more. Ah. I understand. Are your Pokemon all okay with it? Yeah. Blue Heart is going to be sad, but everyone understands. I sighed as I walked up to him. It's not fair. They shouldn't let me make so many friends if I can't keep them all with me. I grumbled at him, and he snorted, laying a heavy hand on my head and smushing my mostly cockeyed hat around to get it back in place after playing with Arcanine. You're a good trainer, and you like being with your friends. But you have a limit on Pokemon you can take with you, just like everyone. I know. I grumbled, but nodded. Going back to my team. Everyone was looking at me. I love you all. I'm so happy we all got to play here in Alola. And I promise we'll all run around again. But for now, take care of everyone at home while I train the little ones. Please. Dra Dragon. Dragonite walked over and took Dratini, still acting like a scarf around her neck, and plopped him around my own. Then she handed over the incubator. Drag. Me. Milo. I understand. I'll take care of them. And I'll train Dratini up good. I promise when you see him soon, he'll blow you away with how much he's grown. I looked at Blissey and smiled. Even without our top trainer's direct help. Bliss. She tittered. All right. I reached for my belt. Everyone. Return. I'll see you again soon. And they each disappeared one after another until Blue Heart was last, and I walked over and pressed a hand to his big nose. Watch over everyone, okay? I believe in you. Teeny. Dra. Dratini called out to him as well and pressed himself against Blue Heart, who rumbled happily at the affection from his friend. And as Blue Heart closed his eyes ready, I returned him too. This sucks. I grumbled and Dratini nuzzled my cheek to cheer me up and I nodded. Don't be gentle with me now. I'm planning on running all of you through lots of training. I warned him, and he just cooed, even happier about that. Silly dragon. But I couldn't ask for anything better. The island trials would be an amazing chance to train my little ones, to get them focused and battle-hardened, and more importantly, work on our bond. I'd just miss my other friends. Oh well. This was a vacation, and I'd see them all when we got home. Heh. I wonder if I could buy a house here in Alola and just have all of them. No, better not go there. I knew that was just wishful thinking. Right. Let's go transfer everyone. I called out and waved to Mama and Papa as I rushed off to the Pokemon Center. You do remember it takes a while, right? I know. I'm just waiting. Quietly, I assured Nurse Joy, who gave me a look before nodding. At least you aren't asking me every 5 minutes this time. I was just nervous. It was the first time. Sorry. That was probably pretty annoying. I offered to the older woman, who gave me a look before her stare shifted into a smile. It's okay. You truly have a strong love for your Pokemon. And you had a Blissey, so I completely understand worrying about her. I held back a snort only barely as the nurse revealed her true opinion. But I continued to sit in front of the nurse's desk and kicked my leg as I waited. Hearing from everyone back home had been nice. Elizabeth had said that everyone had been good, mostly. Riolu had been pranking up a storm free from her mother's oversight, and Gibble had been. Well, the Milotic had gotten a workout trying to keep her from jumping into the pond and then drowning after staying in too long. I'd have to work with her about that. I heard giggles and looked over to see Dratini happily playing with some of the other Pokemon Center users. A pair of Alolans were more than happy to have Dratini play with their Togedemaru as the hedgehog was spinning around and Dratini was chasing it all over the Pokemon Center's rest area. It was cute, but I was just anxious. I don't know why I felt so anxious each time I used this long-distance transfer system, but I was. It didn't even make sense. I trusted that it was safe, but... I breathed in and out, just breathing. Then I heard it. The sound of the machine turning on and I jumped up as Nurse Joy looked from me to it, and then gave that amused smile as she headed over. Slowly Pokeballs started appearing and I grinned at seeing my premier balls appearing in the device. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My friends. Your transfer is complete. Nurse Joy said and I grinned happily as I scooped them all up. Dratini. Everyone is here. Let's go. I called out. He looked up towards me, before sending an apologetic noise at the Togedemaru before slithering across the floor towards me, and I reached down and helped him climb up onto my shoulders before I took off towards the beach. Just as much as I didn't want to send my friends back to Kanto and would miss them. I'd missed these friends too. Ah. Mimikyu. I bet you were so lonely. You'd have to tell me all about your projects you'd worked on. I hit the sands and found Mama, Papa, and Lucario all camped out, and Lucario perked up as I arrived racing up to them. Say hello again. I called out and started releasing Pokemon. I laughed in delight as the noise picked up. I was tackled off my feet by Mimikyu, landing in the soft sand, and then laughing as Jangmo started roaring to the heavens as his feet tippy-tapped in the sand. Brave appeared in the sand for a moment, before huffing and woogling over to a frisbee Papa had been playing with Arcanine and Lucario with, and slipped inside to get away from the sand, while Riolu cried out and leapt at her mama. Then I looked over and there was one confused girl who looked around as if trying to figure out why everything around her changed for a moment. As she finally seemed to look down and felt the warm sand and then her whole body jerked up as she saw the crashing waves. Gib! She cried out just once, and started waddling off towards the waves, her claws opening and closing constantly. Ha! Ha 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 ha! I broke into laughter as everyone was chattering away and making noise, and I felt good, warm again. I missed you all. I told them, giving hugs all around, Mimikyu of course still in my arms, but I scooped up Jangmo and kissed his forehead before letting him squirm away as I lifted Brave out of the sandy frisbee. I'll get you some water to rest in. I apologized to her, but I placed her on my shoulder as I locked eyes with Riolu. Tisk. Tisk, we both responded to each other, but I was happy to see her. Then I nodded, and raced for the water after Gibble. Gibble Gable. Don't rush at the waves. You still aren't a good swimmer on your own. I shouted, but there was no listening in that brain, only Gib. She hit the first wave and was completely washed over, but I just laughed as she then floated past me, half on her back arms still grasping but only at the sky, before the wave then sucked her out into the ocean. That Gibble. Hold on. I just managed to gasp out, as I was breaking into laughter as I managed to scoop her up before she was completely out into the ocean laughing all the while. Chapter 109. And swim swim swim. I called out. I was resting on an inner tube as my hands were held out, and I was urging Gibble to swim as hard as she could. I grinned as I kept my hands out, giving her little hands something to push against as she began beating her feet in the ocean. And slowly I was being pushed back. I grinned as the training efforts were showing results. Gib. 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 She muttered to herself slowly as she continued to push me around, making a good headway in the water. Gibble had liked the water, but her distraction meant her swimming was not as strong as it should be. So instead of focusing on attacks, I was using her interest to get her more physical training and trying to work on her awareness. Considering how happy she was to be in the ocean, I'd say it was a good choice. She'd likely always be my little airhead, but that didn't mean training wouldn't bring out the true her. I mean, even now, With just some minor assistance, she was pushing both of us in the ocean with just her back feet. She was getting the hang of properly swimming the more we practiced, and that was honestly all she needed. She might even be able to swim safely on her own. Well, maybe soon. I wasn't going to test that until I was sure. I thought you were using this time for training. I heard the call behind me, and turned around to see Papa standing on the beach with Riolu and Lucario together. While technically today was a training day, I was letting Riolu get some time with her mama, and of course the two of them had gotten into a game of beach ball, dragging Papa into it. I am endurance training. Uh-huh. Is that what you're calling it? He called out, teasing, and I grinned. I was absolutely just playing in the ocean with Jibble, but it was still training too. Yep. Well, come on. It's lunchtime. Alright. Once Jibble pushes us out, I called out, and Jibble, still single-mindedly just swimming forward, was well on her way to do just that. So I just leaned in and smiled, keeping my teeth hidden. Didn't want her to catch teeth so close to her face. Keep going. You got it. I told her, assuring her, and Jibble just kept on trucking. Gib. 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 But there was more of a light in her eyes than there ever had been. She might always be like that. Be a bit odd, but she was growing into the person she was meant to be. And I grinned, lips quivering to keep it from spreading open and maybe getting Jibble to mistake it for a threat. And then I felt it. Jibble pushed us right onto the beach, and I grinned as my feet felt sand and the waves started pushing us forward. But even when the wave flowed over Jibble, she didn't hesitate, just pushing through. Yeah. I cheered, and then I couldn't even stay in the inner tube as I started walking back, fighting the waves, and Jibble hit the sand and finally stopped. GIBRGL? She seemed to question just as a wave hit her, and she went rolling a bit, but instead of being dragged around, she oriented herself and started swimming right back into my arms. Good job. I called out, lifting her out of the water so the next wave would just push me back and not snatch her up again. And then there was a moment where she looked at me. A bond. She was, oh nope. She was just still swimming. Hee hee hee. I laughed into the sky as she was still faux paddling in my arms. You're definitely a little dreamer, aren't you? I whispered and rose up, grabbing the inner tube and hauling both of us out of the water and onto the warm sands. Phew. It was actually getting hot. Oof, ah. I hissed as I dashed across the beach for our spot. Mama, sitting in a chair soaking up some sun, sent me a look as I ran for my flip-flops and slipped into them with a sigh. It's getting hot. I know. I argued back, grumbling a bit. Mama just smirked at me, just like her Meowth. The little shit. I settled into a chair beside her, and was instantly attacked. Hee hee. Mimikyu. I laughed as he launched onto my head with a towel and started attacking my wet hair. What are you doing? I laughed as the towel was practically power rubbed over my head until finally it stopped and he was sitting on my head. The towel dropped down around my neck. I felt his little shadow fingers worm into my now mostly dry hair, and I grinned up at him. He still didn't like the ocean water much. Or the sand. I looked around and smiled. All of my team were doing well. Gummy was enjoying her break from morning training, snacking on some berries while sitting in a bowl of water to soak back up after training. Jangmo was racing along the sands beside Riolu, barking like a dog as he chased the ball after Riolu snagged it from Papa and took off running. Dratini was tittering, having been hanging out in the ocean, but seeing Jibble and I leave, he came slithering out of the waves and up the sand. Thankfully, the sand, which was getting a bit hot for my bare feet, didn't seem to bother him, quite the opposite. I nodded. Everyone was doing well. After lunch we'd continue training. Riolu, bring the ball back. It's lunchtime. I called out, and she stopped and stared. Our eyes met across the sands, and despite Jangmo barking at her heels, she stared at me. Then she scoffed and carried the ball back to Papa, holding it over her head so Jangmo couldn't get it. Lucario, I noticed, looked between the two of us, and rolled her eyes. Finally we all packed up, and since it was so much easier to feed my baby monsters, we just went to a restaurant, and everyone got cooked food that I didn't have to make myself. It was a bit of a relief, I'll admit, even if I liked cooking for my team. After lunch I lined everyone up on the beach, even Riolu with a look as she'd been about half a second away from running off to play with Papa. Jibble was wrapped up in Dratini's coils to keep her from just wandering to the ocean. She wouldn't get much out of this talk, but that's okay. Alright. Training camp is officially on. First thing first. Z moves. I called out, and that got everyone's attention. Well, except Jibble. She was still trying to walk into the ocean. I've learned how to use the Z move without passing out. And it won't make you pass out anymore either. I called out and Jang Mo's feet started tippy-tapping. Jang. Jang Jang Mo. Hey, easy. I'll have all of you train with the Z moves we have, lots and lots of training. But first, I need some training too. What we need to do is figure out how quickly I can use a Z move back to back. If I did one right away I still pass out, but if we spread it out a bit. That way we can set up a training schedule. First off. Riolu. Rio? We earned the Phytinium Z move last time, but we never got a chance to try it out. We earned it together. I offered and held it out letting Riolu see the orange crystal. Rio. Lu? I just nodded at her slightly confused face. We might not get along, but that was something different than our bond as trainers. I'd promised to train her into the strongest after all. Let's practice it, and then, I can use another Z move in 30 minutes. That'll give us all some solid training time if I do end up needing a break. I explained and she hesitantly nodded. Even Riolu couldn't deny her interest in Z moves. Okay. While Riolu and I do that. How much have you all been training while you were gone, huh? I asked, hands on my hips, and I noticed a few of my friends looked away pretending I couldn't see them. Uh-huh. Alright. Special attack training at the ocean. I want to see your growth. Let's go, go, go. I called out and everyone raced towards the ocean to take position. I helped out. Mimikyu got a beach towel to sit on. Brave her plate, and Jibble? I just put Jibble in the inner tube. I'd need to give her more focused training, but for now, her endurance training with swimming was just going to be her main focus. Alright, Riolu. Ready? Rio. Riolu. She agreed. For once there was no hesitation. She was humming with the chance to use a Z move as well. Alright, let's go over the moves. First a big splits, lifting my leg straight up. Which I couldn't really do well, but that was okay. One leg high into the sky, then drop it down like a sumo wrestler. Sumo stance. Right leg shift and stomp. Arms up and then spread wide. Double punch forward, wrists crossed. Then rapid punches, and double punch. Then a final full palm forward. Even just practicing it, I felt that surge of power flow through me. I was getting better and better at getting the Z move to activate. Then I looked at Riolu, who'd been watching eagerly, her little trail wagging. You got it? Rio. She agreed instantly. Okay, let's try it together then. I offered and she took her pose. Once again the splits was the hard part, and we moved through the Z move, but I could see Riolu was too fast. Racing ahead. Slow down, Riolu. I said calmly, as I broke into the punches while Riolu was already far ahead. Then the connection broke. She turned to glare at me. It's called practice. We need to sync up. Let's do it again. I assured her. I took a moment to check on my team and smiled. While they'd definitely been slacking, they were still stronger. Brave, I noticed, was absolutely leading the group. Her dragon pulse was being thrown out with strength and consistency that was making the boys look bad. I grinned as that made both Jangmo and Dratini push themselves even more. I shook it off and looked at Riolu. Again. She growled and we once more ran through the poses, which really the splits was not fun, and Riolu once again raced ahead, and our bond splintered. Riolu. You have to slow down. Rio. Riolu. Rio. It's not about speed. We need to sync up. Then we can speed up. I snapped at her, and then we were both growling at each other, face smashed into her face as we glared. Rio. Riolu. You want to go? Ryu. She growled and I was about to start throwing hands when both of us were lifted off our feet. Eh. Lucario. Rio. Ryu. Riolu whined as we both looked into the not at all impressed eyes of Lucario. Lu. Lucario, Lu. She shook us both and dropped us, leaving us both rubbing our butts from the sandy drop. Then she crossed her arms, and we both wilted. Ah. Bummer. I looked at Riolu and sent her a firm, "This is your fault," look which she instantly returned. But we both stood up, and shook the sand off, and I took the starting pose. Again. I called out, and Rio grumbled. Pose after pose, and with Lucario right there, Riolu didn't rush ahead, and I felt that connection grow between us. The pulse of heat and warmth. The understanding. The surge of power flowed and Riolu surprisingly accepted it easily. Despite everything. We didn't have any disruption? Were Riolu and I surprisingly synced up? No, that's impossible. It was just luck or something. Now. All out pummeling. I roared as I pushed the energy forward, but limiting it, not just letting it all surge up to use everything. Just like throwing a punch, control was more important than just power. If you just gave everything into a punch, you'd likely just miss or leave yourself open. A Z move was powerful, it was amazing, but it needed control. Ryu. Lu. And then Riolu started throwing fists, and out came those energy palms. Lulu. She keyed letting the move guide her, and the ocean started exploding as each attack hit. Unlike devastating Drake or breakneck blitz, all-out pummeling was a multiple strike attack, but it was also seemingly weaker for it. Or Riolu's vacuum wave was just not the strongest move choice for it. Either way, it was still awe-inspiring, and soon Riolu ran out of the Z energy and stopped. Breathing a bit heavily, she stood there staring at the thrashing waves from the attack. Rio. She suddenly jumped up cheering and looked straight to her mother. Lucario had definitely been watching standing still and tall behind us, and as she watched the waves finally end their disruption, she looked to Riolu. Lucario. She said firmly, and Riolu raced forward to tackle her mother, nearly crying in delight. Heh. Yeah. That was impressive. I said, even if it wasn't the most amazing Z move I'd seen. It was still amazing. Very cool. Papa said suddenly behind me and throwing an arm over my shoulder. I didn't think you and Riolu would get that off so quickly. Hee hee. Me neither. Okay. I hissed as I sat down. 30 minutes and a second Z move, this time giving Jangmo his devastating Drake, and it still hit like a truck. I wasn't falling on my face, but I was tired. Jang? I'm okay. I assured him as he came zipping around past me, tearing up the sand with his claws as it was like someone hooked him up to a power line. Hee. I reached out and pulled him into my lap to hug him tight. That was amazing. I told him and got a happy wiggle in turn. 30 minutes was definitely pushing what I was capable of though. I'll try 45 and see if that works, and I'll need to try again to see how much I recover. If I can figure out the exact time frame, I can see about training. Are Z moves like a muscle? Or maybe would increasing the bond between me and my Pokemon make them even easier? Or maybe if the Pokemon were stronger? Was that a factor? Ugh, there were a lot of things I'd have to keep an eye on, but for now, I was done for a while. Still have energy? I asked him and he nodded his head happily against my chest, his feet wiggling into the sky. Alright, go ahead, and let's see some more dragon pulses. I called out, and he raced off to the firing line that I'd set up. Pokemon shooting attacks into the ocean was eye-catching, and I'd gotten plenty of interested looks from locals and tourists about what was going on. Especially since Dragon Pulse was fairly flashy as far as moves went. I looked over my team as they worked, and nodded. A lot of them needed some focus, and I'd have to give it to all of them while balancing the others. I could literally spend all day with Jibble, and still not have enough time for her, for example, but that's just the nature of it all. Besides, getting Jibble some time with the other dragons, and having them actually play was good for her too. I shook it off and headed to one of my other girls. One that deserved some solo attention for a bit. Good job, Brave. I called out as I flopped down into the sand beside her, and she looked away from the ocean. Her plate of water was getting a bit low. I noticed, and nodded at me, before charging up once again a bit Dragon Pulse. The orb flew out and smashed across the waves, raining a bit of water down on all of us. Goom. Goomy. She said, nodding at her work, and I couldn't help but nod along with her. Yeah, it's amazing. You've grown so strong. Goom. In fact, you've grown enough to learn something new. I revealed and grinned as Gummy spun in her dish and looked up at me with big stars in her eyes. Yep. Normally I teach Lightning Rod now. But, you can't learn any Steel-type moves, unless you evolve into a Hisuian Sliggoo. Goom? Goom? It's a variant. Like how that Meowth is a Dark type, instead of normal. Gummy, if they are raised in a heavy iron-rich environment, become a Steel and Dragon-type Pokemon, instead of just a Dragon type. Goo? Goomy? I think you're perfect just the way you are. I mean, if you want to I would help, but I think it's better to just be you. Goom. Goomy? I asked, not quite understanding, and she puffed herself out and made a cute little growl roar. Are they stronger? Goom. Not really. Just different. Steel types give you a lot of defenses, and it removes your weakness to fairy types, but a dragon is a dragon. Goodra is strong, no matter what. Goom. Goomy goom. She decided, flopping up and down a few times as if she was getting bigger. Yeah, you'll grow strong no matter what. I promise. Goom. Right. So what I'm going to teach you. Since you can't learn Iron Tail or something else to mitigate for a Lightning Rod, you need another method to counter electric type moves. Or just many attacks in general. I grinned as I reached out and took her plate. The basic idea is that you spin around as fast as you can while using a move. Dragon Pulse, or maybe even your area Dragon Pulse, and that causes the attack to counter against a lot of moves. While saying this, I slowly spun the plate around and Gummy was giggling as she spun around in circles. It's gonna be hard though. It needs a lot of speed, and you have to put out a lot of power for a counter shield. So, ready for some tough training? Gummy. I knew you'd say that. Let's find a good place to practice, and maybe use water gun to start out. Yeah, that'd be for the best. A little more water isn't going to hurt anyone on a beach. So let's get started. I grinned as she was eager. Plus, once she had this down, it would give the boys even more of a hill to climb to catch up. Dratini and Jangmo both would have all the motivation in the world to grow stronger, and Gummy would be a big source of that. How is it? I asked as I caught up with Mama, wiping my forehead. It wasn't sweat anymore. I'd jumped into the ocean after an intense training session with Gummy, but Mama smiled and lifted up the towel we'd placed over the incubator. Mimikyu looked up from under the towel, and I blinked. Is that where he was hiding? Just like it was last time you checked. It's an egg. I'm just worried. I muttered, and Mama just smiled at me. You get too anxious. It'll come. Done for the day? She asked, dropping the towel back down on Mimikyu, who slumped over. I guess he was super tired too. At least for a bit. I agreed as I found a seat, Meowth opening her eyes to sort of look at me before they closed and once more purred a little louder so Mama would return her fingers to stroking along her back. My team was mostly playing by now. Even Brave, after an intense session, was using her plate as a kind of surfboard. It was just deep enough in the ocean that when the waves hit she was rocked up and I could hear her giggles as the plate scraped along the sand before settling in. I'd definitely have to take her out for real surfing after. Riolu was off with Lucario, having ducked out of training while I was distracted, and the three of them, because of course Lucario was with Papa, were out doing something on the island. Gibble was playing with Dratini, the two of them swimming around. I'd have to get Gibble out of the water soon, so she could rest. She'd been in there nearly all afternoon. And then Jangmo was. I looked under the beach chair I was on, and he was snoring in the shade, laying on his back and his mouth wide open. Taking a nap. Heh. Training was going well though. But. I grinned. I had plans to make their training even better tonight. Tonight? Tonight we were going to battle. But for now they could cool down, take some naps, or in Jibble's case just keep swimming. I myself stretched out on the chair and relaxed. A nap sounded pretty good right about now. Chapter 110. Well, sense anything? Or smell anything? I asked as Riolu kept looking around. She sent me a look and I rolled my eyes and faux-zipped my lips. She huffed and continued going around in circles. That was literally the tree we crossed like 10 minutes ago. A good person would say something positive and get us on the right path, maybe something uplifting to make sure they'd know they hadn't messed up, and they just needed to practice. That's the same tree we crossed. I pointed out with a finger, and Riolu howled, slamming her paw into the floor a few times and then picking up a stick and throwing it. I was just an okay person. Riolu. She pointed at me, and I scoffed. Don't blame this on me. I literally asked if you could do it, and you said yes. Rio. Oh, it's maybe now? Doubt. I'm doubting. This is my doubt face. I yelled out, both fingers pointing at my own face. Rio. She leapt about to attack me, but instead of hitting me she sort of just fell into me, and I caught her, as we both turned. An explosion? Bingo? Rio. She cheered smugly, and I laughed, and I spun her around for a second before throwing her forward and then chasing after. Rio. She grumbled at me as she hit the ground running and we both took off through the jungle of Melee. The only thing I'd remembered was that the wild Pokemon battle arena had been close to Kukui's home. I'd started from there, and then ran around, hoping Riolu would be able to sense aura. I should have asked Lucario to help instead. Oh well. We'd probably found it. You didn't see so many explosions in the middle of the night for just nothing. Of course, instantly we both realized a problem, coming out of a jungle right up against a mountain of sorts. It's up there. I whispered, absolutely sure. I could hear it now, multiple Pokemon, and the noise of battle. I grinned. Ready for a climb? I asked, and Riolu scoffed before starting to practically bounce up the mountain. Of course. I wish I had one of my big Pokemon with me. But that was for another time. I reached out and started climbing, monkeying my way up, until the very top. Riolu was already up there, I noticed, getting some attention, but as I climbed up, there was already a battle taking place. A Boldore was launching attack after attack at a flying Fearow. Nice. Of course my appearance got a lot of attention. The wild Pokemon stiffened, but I just settled in, and I nudged Riolu, and she hesitated before sighing. Riolu. Rio. She called to the nearest, and they slowly relaxed, only keeping half an eye on me as we all watched the battle. Yeah. This was definitely where I was meant to be. I released my Pokemon around me. Mimikyu, already hiding in my hat, was watching, but everyone but Jibble was released around me, with her in my arms, holding her from running off, probably off the cliff as she looked for the ocean. Soon she stilled as she noticed the battle. In the end, the Boldore actually lost. The Fearow, dropping a powerful drill peck after lifting the Boldore up into the sky and then crashing it into the earth. The Pokemon cheered, but more and more were noticing me. Hi. I'm Vicky. I called out, loud enough they could all hear me, and I was getting plenty of angry looks. I'm not here to catch anyone. Or cause any problems. But my Pokemon are looking for battles, just like you. I waved at my team, even dropping a hand on Jangmo-o's head as he looked ready to start charging. Magmar. The voice cracked out like a whip as a Magmar leapt up from somewhere behind some rocks and backlit himself. He glared down at me, and I knew he was one of the ones in charge here. Riolu. Lu. Riolu called out in turn, responding to whatever he had said, and he scoffed, pointing at me. Riolu. She responded to me, and it took a minute before I got the idea. Why am I here then? Rio. For this. I said, reaching into my bag, and despite them tensing I pulled out a potion. Then, I rose up, still holding Jibble in one hand. I walked down to the Boldore that was still roughed up and it responded hostilely. Glaring up at me, but I knelt down. This is potion. It'll help those injuries. It'll let you battle again if you want. I told it, and then I reached out and carefully sprayed one of the scuffs on its shell. I held back any amusement at the poor Pokemon's reactions. Potions stung a bit as they healed, but only for a few moments before you were good to go. It relaxed after a moment of cringing and wiggled around, seemingly realizing it was okay. I sprayed a bit more, covering its injuries and then nodding. I can make sure all of you are okay for more than one battle a night. I called out, and that got some interested looks as I returned to my spot. So, who wants to fight first? I called out, and my challenge worked. A Macop stepped out, as Riolu was puffing herself up and roared, flexing his biceps, and Riolu growled. I stepped back. Riolu. Battle well. Rio. She scoffed, raising a fist like this would be a cakewalk. She charged first, and the Pokemon around the arena roared as the battle was on. I settled back as the others gathered around me. Even Gibble was focused on the battle happening in front of her, as Riolu, instead of staying back like I'd trained her, rushed right into close combat and started getting her ass beat. Macop was fast, and unlike Riolu, his form was solid. He was fighting like a fighter, and not just a fighting type Pokemon. I wonder where he'd learned that. One of the older Pokemon? There were a surprising number of fighting types. Either way, Riolu was a strong amateur in that sort of combat, and it showed. Her punches and kicks were easily avoided and the retaliations were brutal. But I grinned. Maybe getting her ass kicked was exactly what she needed. Because Riolu was gritting her teeth, and I could see how quickly she was adapting. Learning, her guard was up more. She was actually doing more than just throwing haymakers already. But, she went down to a nasty cross chop, which was a brutal move for a Macop to have. And I walked up even as Riolu struggled a bit to sit up, and I sprayed her with a potion. Without a word, I went over her injuries, healing her up until she was sore, but not hurting, and I looked at the Macop with the bottle. He waved me off, acting cocky as he sauntered back. Riolu was not reacting well. But I nudged her up and guided her back. Jangmo-o. Your turn. I told my little dragon and raced forward, yipping the whole time before sliding into the center and roaring as loudly as he could. It really just came off cute, but that was okay. Pancham. Another voice called out, and a swaggering Pancham walked out, chewing on his leaf and looking like he was ready to kick ass. Jangmo-o. Battle well. I called out, and unlike Riolu, he nodded, seeming to listen to the actual instructions. The battle began, and Jangmo-o arced to the side, already gathering energy and starting to blast the area with Dragon Pulse. But the Pancham wasn't idle. He picked up and threw rocks, or blasted his own dark pulses out to block. Jangmo-o was doing a great job though. Keeping up, and sticking to distance, after realizing up close he'd be in just as much trouble as Riolu. But that couldn't work forever, and so he learned a different lesson from Riolu. He began blasting Dragon Pulse area to push the charging Pancham back, or switching to Dragon Tail when the Pancham was too close. The two went at it, until Jangmo-o slumped to a hammering blow onto his back. The Pancham, to my surprise, didn't try any cheap attacks or anything. Once it was sure the battle was over, it stalked over to me, and puffed up. To the victor. I accepted his obvious demand and potioned him first, before hurrying to Jangmo-o, who looked a little disheartened. Come on, buddy. You did great, and this is a great learning experience. Just trust me. I know losing sucks, but I'll make it better soon. Jang. He huffed as I picked him up and carried both my little dragons back to my group. On and on. Soon the 1v1s wasn't enough for the wild Pokemon. More and more Pokemon began battling around us, and I helped all of them that ended up injured, earning myself a sort of odd place in the wild Pokemon dojo. But while I did that, my Pokemon found their opponents. Brave took part, fighting a Sableye. Dratini battled with a Spinda. Loss after loss. Gibble I kept back for now, and then it was Mimikyu's turn, and for once the battle shifted. He didn't go easy on the Mankey that challenged him, and with a nice combination of moves Mankey was knocked out, leaving Mimikyu untouched. The others looked on in shock, and I couldn't help but grin, even as I kept my laughter inside. Did most of them think Mimikyu was weaker? He's the ace of the baby team. Mimikyu, great job. Come back. I called out, as I rose up and healed up his opponent. Then when I returned, my little guys were mostly disheartened. Good. It's tough, huh? Fighting for real? I looked at my team as Jangmo and Riolu both sent me pouty looks. But this was the opportunity one knew I had to take advantage of. Each of my team was different. Each would respond differently, but they all had to learn. Losing sucks, huh? Fighting against a more skilled, stronger opponent, and having to learn to adapt, to grow in the heat of the moment to try and overcome, and even then failing? Riolu. She huffed at me, grouchily. Giving up already? Riolu. She rose to her feet and I stepped right into her personal space. I've raised champions before. And I'll do it again. But I won't just raise Pokemon that are strong. Or Pokemon that coast on their strength. Then I pointed right to the sky. The top. Not just halfway, not high enough to be good enough. To the summit. I trained the 1 in a million. I roared and even the wild Pokemon stepped back, even Riolu stepped back. You think that your mother asked me to train you to just be strong? She wanted you to be the best. I yelled out, and then shot my eyes over my team. Even Gibble at my side was looking up at me at my shouting. You'll struggle. You'll lose. And you'll learn how to win even with a loss. You'll learn to get up even when every part of you says you've lost. And then you'll rise. Right to the top. And win. Because you are the best. I poked Riolu in her chest and she stumbled back shocked. I looked and caught the eye of each of my team. If you don't have the will to be that 1 in a million, to be the apex, I'll still love you. You'll always be my friend. But I don't think any of you lack the will to grow to be the strongest. Tonight is the start of that climb. It wasn't the training you've done so far. It wasn't the strength you've gathered before we met. It's now. I shifted and pointed. The wild Pokemon, many of them fighting types. The Magmar that ruled over them all. I pointed right at him. You're about to see the makings of the strongest that will ever be. That ever were. Congratulations. You'll be part of their legends that we will carve into the very stars themselves. I shouted out. I wasn't breathless. There was no doubt of the way forward. I wouldn't fail my team, my friends, and I grinned as Riolu stomped out past me, returning to the center, and then, Ryu! She shouted and I could practically feel the aura emanating off her. Untrained, untested, but she'd grow. And a Primeape stepped out. I grinned as the much stronger Pokemon stood opposite Riolu's challenge, and my little fighter just grinned, glancing just for a second back. As if seeing if I was watching. Of course I was right. Now she was the star of the show. Tonight was the start of her legend. I'd engrave it all into my heart. You were out late. Bleg. I muttered, blinking sleepily into my breakfast. If you call staying up until the sun rises, up late, then yes. I of course was tired, not stupid, I didn't say that. Training. I muttered and nodded. That tended to cover a lot of things. Is this like the endurance training from yesterday? Papa asked, and I huffed. No. Battle training. I said and looked at Lucario, who was entering into the breakfast nook in the hotel. Mama had woken me up not long after I crashed this morning, but it was best they didn't know just how much I'd stayed up. Lucario? Riolu is resting. We had battle training last night. She's tired. I told her, and she blinked at me, then her eyes narrowed like she totally realized I was hiding something. But then I firmed myself up as I sat up a bit straighter. She's getting stronger. Lu. She said with a single pleased nod and then settled in to eat breakfast, completely unconcerned about Riolu from then on. Lucario had one goal for her child, to get strong. She'd followed that goal to even end up joining trainers, and living a completely new life. I hope she loved her life, and I just had to fill in my side. Make Riolu into the strongest. I yawned again. Nurse Joy had not been happy about my early morning visit to get everyone checked out, but she was also used to it. I'm going back to sleep. I finally said with another yawn, cracking my jaw and killing my ability to eat. You shouldn't sleep in. Papa said, giving me a look, and I shrugged. Sorry, but I need a nap. Alright, go on. It's a vacation, if you want to spend it sleeping in, then that's fine. He teased, and I grinned back before nearly yawning again. Dang it. I headed back to my hotel room and flopped into bed. Everyone was resting in their pokeballs rather than around the room. I'd really worked them all, but they'd all made a big improvement. First they had to learn how to lose. Then when they knew how to push through even at a disadvantage, after they'd built the skills from being weak, I'd make them strong. I stretched as I headed out into the sun and groaned. Not enough sleep to completely catch up, but that was just part of being a trainer sometimes. I'd catch up later after dinner before we headed out for another visit to the Wild Pokemon Battle Club. I clenched my fist and put it up into the sky, staring at it, at how much my team had grown in just one night. I'd have to buy more potions soon. I was actually using up a lot of it. I wish Blissey was here, she'd love this. Nope. I'm feeling good today, and not missing anyone. They're home and relaxing and having fun, and I'll see them soon. Okay. I called out and started to charge when I caught sight of someone I was surprised to see. Professor Kukui? Oh, Alola. Huh? Ah. Alola, Vicky. Good to see you. He called out, laughing. Shouldn't you be in class? Normally. But there's a trip today. The whole class is visiting Akala. How about you? Aren't you normally on the beach? Hee hee. I stayed up late last night training, and so I'm getting a late start. Training? Uh-huh. Did you know there's a spot where wild Pokemon gather not too far from your house, up on a big rock? I went there last night, and all my Pokemon took part. Huh. I did actually. Clawmark Hill. It's a private spot. Humans aren't usually allowed to take part, it's something just for the wild battles here on Melee. Well, offering them a bit of potion between their battles seemed to earn me a place. I didn't mess up, did I? If the wild Pokemon let you stay, then I think you're alright. You said you battled them? No, I let my Pokemon battle. No orders. Just letting my team get some experience. Nothing better than a little head-to-head for young Pokemon, to learn how to push through. I added, and Kukui smiled. I'm kinda jealous, that sounds like a real blast burn. Hee hee. Yeah, it took a bit to get them engaged. Thankfully they didn't take their losses badly, and started pushing through. These lot definitely got it. I let my hands drift over my Pokeballs, everyone was still resting, but I was feeling super proud. Honestly, the only issue was that as good as battle training was, they really needed more instruction as well, and I didn't have. Well, I had Lucario, who'd probably help. Then I looked up and Kukui had a moment where he blinked and raised his hand and pointed at his face. Professor. Do you want to take part in some training? That's tempting. He said, playing cool, but I could see the eagerness. You see, while my Pokemon like my Riolu are growing stronger, what they need is more combat instruction. I have Jangmo and Riolu, both fighting types, and Lucario was a wild Pokemon, and never really did fighting gym training. I see what you're asking. A Riolu, huh? I saw your Lucario during the conference. She was strong. Overwhelming. Thanks. But she was a newer addition to my team, I didn't have as much time to really make her shine, and she only joined to make me agree to train Riolu. Really? They were both wild, and I impressed Lucario. She decided I'd make Riolu into the strongest. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright. He nodded, then a hand raised up and adjusted his hat. You've got me feeling like I just used burn up. I got an idea. Bring your team in. Your Lucario? Oh, I can get her to come if it's for training Riolu. Definitely. He agreed and I smiled, holding out a hand, and he grinned and we shook on it. Alright, come by the Pokemon school, we can use the fields there. Perfect. I'll go get them. Thanks, Professor. Ha ha ha. He laughed joyfully as I raced off, and I noticed as I looked back he was racing off too. Heh. He wasn't so calm as he liked to pretend, he liked battling and training too. I raced to the beach and found everyone already out in our spot. Lucario was drinking from a straw out of a little coconut drink, and looking like the most relaxed Pokemon in the world. Lucario! I called out as I skidded to a stop in front of her. Lu? Can I borrow you for an afternoon? I asked, and she reached up and pulled down the cute silly sunglasses she'd been wearing. Definitely something Papa bought for her. Lu. It's for training Rio, Lu. I added, and her denial shifted as she seemed to check to make sure I wasn't playing before nodding once. Ah, you pulled the Riolu card. Papa called out and I grinned at him, but he looked at me. What's going on, trouble? I just ran into Professor Kukui, and he agreed to help with some training with my team. Kukui is an amazing battler. Probably the best battler in all of Alola. Riolu just had a bunch of battle training last night, and this is the perfect time to refine what she's learned. Lu. Lucario. She rose up, apparently sold, but then stalled and looked at Papa, who just grinned. You don't have to ask me. But. Mind if I come? He asked, and I blinked at Papa's words. Sure. I agreed, smiling, and Mama just waved at us from her chair, a book in her lap, and Meowth curled up and purring as she seemed quite content on the beach. To the Pokemon school. Great. School, I hope to never have to step foot in one of those ever again. Papa muttered, and Lucario and I both laughed as I started pulling him along.
Genesis of the Void says, thanks for the chapter. Papa Ferrous is really a dog guy, huh? Krant says, solid battling build-up. Good to see Vicky keeping a promise to Lucario. Digital Hazard says, are we finally seeing Rolu's clean up your attitude story arc? Lord Traden says, Mr. Still Your Dog is getting some time in the spotlight. Nice. Blazerodo says, thanks for the chapter. Vicky's taking some lessons from Blissey on how to make friends. The little ones will be some future terrors.